All right. Mike Meacher, welcome to Going Again podcast. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. This is really cool, guys.
Oh, thank you so much for being here.
Hey, and thank you.
Such a pleasure.
Thank you, Mike, for my brand new Stormbed Paleontology coffee mug.
I thought you said Bailey's Ontology.
Yeah, thank you.
Today it should be, because I think it is.
Bailey's Ontology. That's pretty good. All right. Well, welcome and thank you for driving. Well, I suppose you had a gig last night in town.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, so no, it worked out perfect. Thanks for accommodating that. I'm sure.
Cool.
Sunday at 9 a.m. is not when anyone wants to do anything.
Well, it's not that bad. It's all good.
Nobody else is going to know it's Sunday at 9 a.m. drinking Bailey's and coffee.
That's true with the Shade Shack. It could be 5 o'clock. Let's have a beer.
That's actually true. It actually feels kind of dark in here.
Yeah.
Where'd you gig last night?
I played at downtown Hespeler, a place called the New York.
The New York.
The New York.
No,
Yes.
I've never heard of it.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, it's fairly new. I guess they've been open about 2 or 3 years now. But,
Hence the name, eh? New York.
Yeah, the New York. So that the owner, his name is Jason York. So yeah, he's from England. Hopefully I have that right. Yeah.
So this has nothing to do with the great city of America.
The
He's new to
decor
Canada, so he's
sort
the
of
New York.
Yeah. Well, he's an immigrant, so
Yeah.
British guy, and but it's a really cool spot. It's all stone walls in the main dining room, so just the acoustics are fantastic.
Nice.
I love playing.
Sweet.
There. Yeah.
I have to check it out.
Cool. And
Shout
you're
out to
gigging
New
quite a
York.
bit. You're gigging quite a bit nowadays.
Yeah, a fair amount. I mean, not as much as I was when I was touring, but I'm as busy as I want to be. Is sort of my answer, my engaging answer.
I mean, you're a guy with like a million hobbies and all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
I'm a victim of my own curiosity. Yeah.
That's wicked.
Cool,
So now, I understand correctly, you're a paleontologist.
And this is very important because there's anyone that's actually an accredited paleontologist. I'm a paleontologist by vocation. So I have no formal training. It's all in the field. I've basically
Pure
learned
interest.
how to do, pure interest driven.
Oh, wicked.
But when I click onto something, I go in full on. So
Well, I was just
that's the coffee mug.
I was just wondering about like dinosaurs and fossils, and playing a keyboard or something. Like the only paleontologist I know is Ross Geller, but he's also a musician. So I thought it was kind of neat.
Ross Geller from Friends,
Oh, hey.
right?
Right, that's right. Yes, and actually, Ross, I remember that somebody sent me a clip of, he mentions a trilobite, and I wish I could remember the context because it would be funny, but no, it's Sunday morning, and I gigged last
We should have
night.
done our research.
But so the previous, now he's since retired, but this guy, Dave Rudkin, was the previous director of invertebrate paleontology at the ROM, and a musician as well, and a guitar collector. So I never actually got to meet him in person. We've talked, but he's sort of became friends with him on Facebook and saw that he had a guitar collection. It's like,
Oh, wicked.
and I know a couple other guys that are musicians that are also,
And now you got to combine them both, and you got to do a rock album about bones and fossils. And
I've
Makes for a great love song.
You're not the first person to say it, and I just can't find a way where it's not just cheesy as hell. It just doesn't work. It's just like, you either go like over the top, dripping with metaphor, or you just you just embrace it. Like I'm basically doing a Raffi song, and it's about
100%.
trilobites.
Well, before we dive deep into paleontology, let's go from the Mudmen. I was actually quite a fan of Mudmen, and then you became their singer for a bit.
Yeah, I did it
My
for,
God.
6 years, and obviously the time over COVID is a little bit hit and miss because we weren't working that much. We were doing the drive-in shows, which was a bizarre experience. But basically I got an email out of the blue from Sandy Campbell, one of the Bagpiper brothers. They are the band, and so over the course of the band's 20+ year history, people have come and go. It's like, Robbie, Sandy's brother, describes it as kind of like a hockey team. It's a traveling hockey team, and guys come and go, but they're like the captains. They steer the ship. It's their gig. And I got basically a cold call from Sandy, and it's like, hey, would you be interested in coming out and playing for Mudmen? Would you be interested in auditioning to be our guitar player? And I thought about it for a while. I was like, that might be really fun, and I've always wanted to try it. and I've always been too mired in other things to actually give it a proper go.
Okay.
So I thought maybe this is a good opportunity, and so I start learning the songs. They send me the work, and I had a trip booked for. I was going to Cuba for 11 days, coming back for 3 days, and then I was going to Las Vegas. And before I left for Cuba, Sandy called me. He's like, "Okay, there's a bit of a problem. Our singer is stepping down, like effective immediately.
Whoa.
Do you think you could not only become the guitar player, but could you be our lead vocalist? And could you be ready to go on a 3-week tour in 3 weeks?"
Wow.
So
Jesus.
I took a little travel guitar, and we were staying in the Bay of Pigs in Cuba, which is, you go live in someone's house, and we were there for scuba diving. And I brought this little travel guitar, and I learned 40 or 50 songs in Cuba between dives.
Oh my God.
And there's all these.
That must have been special for Claire.
It was. She wasn't there. I was on my own. Yeah. So I was in full work mode, and I was playing with with the locals too, and it was weird. So I guess at one point there was about 7 or 8 kids just sitting outside my bedroom window, listening to this weird Celtic music from some white guy, and
hilarious.
Yeah, it was a really surreal experience, and it ended up being a memorable trip. But I managed to get ready in time, and we went on the tour, and we played way the hell up north, and it was like a 22-hour drive, and it was just like trial by fire. Like I think we had half a rehearsal, and it was just hit the stage and go.
Wicked.
Wow.
It was terrifying, in retrospect, but
shoot the rehearsal. That's what we do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, that's awesome. And how long were you with them then?
It was about 6 years. Yeah. So
cool.
I can't remember what the exact number was. It was 400 and something shows, something like that, and X amount of tours, and we played all over Canada and the U.S. and it was a great experience. The traveling, and it actually, without being in Mudmen, I never would have gotten into the fossils again.
Why? So, what do you mean? What happened?
In 2016, we did a tour out west, and we went to. Are you familiar with Drumheller, Alberta? Yeah. So it's like the dinosaur capital of Canada. There's the Royal Tyrrell Museum is there. It's like world-class museum, absolutely incredible. It's in the Badlands. Like it's. So this town has sort of built its identity around the proximity to dinosaurs. So there's like, in Pee Wee Herman, there's that giant dinosaur sculpture. Yeah, essentially they have one of those, and there's all these fossil shops, and there's like these huge poly resin dinosaurs all over just everywhere, like fire hydrants. There's dinosaurs, and so going back out there, and the first vocation I wanted to do was be a paleontologist. When I was a kid, I made this horrible little clay figurine of a paleontologist. Like, that's what I want to be. I was 20 at the time. No, I was like 10. And just being there was just like, oh yeah, I fucking love this shit. And I started researching. Like, well, maybe I can find stuff around me. I was totally ignorant to everything. And it turned out there was like, from where I was living in Cambridge, an hour and a half away, there was this Devonian deposit, 382 million year old rocks that you could find trilobites.
A Devonian deposit?
Yeah.
As opposed to another deposit?
Yes.
Well, that's interesting. I've never heard of it. Whereabouts is it?
So it's a little town called Arkona.
Okay.
It's just west of London, about 40 minutes west of London. And we share basically this Devonian strata with a lot of New York State. So you see a lot of similar species, but there's certain differences. But it's it's been known since the 1860s. There's been some famous Canadian fossil collectors out of that area.
Really?
Yeah. So I started learning from some other collectors and learning how to dig and refine my techniques. And then, like I said, anything I get into, it's over. It's like hook it to my veins kind of thing.
Yeah. And
I got pretty good at it, and made some people mad, and here we are.
Excellent. That's the way to do it.
Man, yeah. I mean, so how long have you technically been doing this?
Yeah, I would say really into it probably since like late 2016 till
Okay.
Here I sit. Yeah.
And when did you start diving? Did they kind of go hand in hand to some degree?
To some degree, because I did find a fossilized shark tooth on a dive in Mexico, which was just like, oh, that's pretty cool.
Did you get to keep that?
But you gotta be. I should be careful here. If any of them, I don't know what the legality is surrounding Mexican fossils.
So the fun thing is you found one.
I did find one. Yeah. Who knows if? I mean, I don't know what happened to it. Who knows? It was a bull shark tooth. This is probably 10,000 years old or something.
Wow,
man,
not that old, but not in terms of this.
I imagine if you find something like that, you're looking for it.
Yeah, I mean there's accidental finds, which is kind of how everything gets started. The first naturalists were hunters, the first biologists were naturalists. One thing feeds the other and evolves into a profession. But
I suppose though, if you're a bird watcher and you're walking through a forest, the trees are there, but your eyes, because of your interest, find birds. So even if you're always scuba diving, you're just hanging out looking at a reef.
Oh yeah.
Your brain is searching for your stuff, regardless of whether you're doing it consciously.
Yeah. We always refer to it as a search image. So in different strata, you have to use a different search image. So it's like you're looking for specific things, like whether it be a color or a shape or whatever the case may be, or a set of. Like in New York State, what you're looking for is like little domes of rock, and those are sort of mud domes, and often things get trapped in those little mud domes, and that's can give you a good chance. So you really turn your search image up and scan and.
Now, so okay, let's say you find one of those mud domes. We're talking underwater now. We're still scuba diving.
No, they're actually. Sorry, I kind of jumped around there. So they're mud domes in stone. At one point it was sediment, but now it's limestone rock. But the shape, it retains the shape. So you look for certain types of shapes and horizons. But
no,
go ahead.
You said this was specific to New York State.
We have them here too to some extent because it's the same group. It's called the Hamilton group. The rocks, basically the strata runs right through. It does not care about the borders. And there's subtle differences, but it's the same kind of animals you find in both sides. But for scuba diving, for me, it's always the animals. Like you're looking for the critters on the reef, kind of thing.
Okay.
So and I think I've done around 300 dives, and I've probably done 299 with my camera, which you're not supposed to do, by the way. But your first 50 you shouldn't do with a camera. But that's always been my interest.
Interesting.
The photography element of it.
I find it fun that you always mention things you're not supposed to do.
I'm trying to not censor myself, but
no, don't do that. So these mud dome deals, though, and I have a burning question that I think everyone listening to this right now does as well. But the mud dome, you find this formation. Does it just break open like an egg, or
think of it kind of like layer, pages in a book. So when you look at specifically these Devonian rocks, if you kind of look at them from the side, there's layers. So you want to split those layers, and I think of it as kind of like pages in a book, or like a scratch ticket. So you're basically going layer by layer as fine as you can.
Oh, okay.
And so a mud dome will be it'll be almost circular and dome. It has a look to it. And they tend
it's basically a bubble.
Kind of like a bubble, yeah.
It's a bubble in the mud, and then just stayed there.
Yep.
And then became fossilized rock.
Yep.
Guys, I don't mean to hold us up for a second, but do you hear the music?
Yeah.
Where's that coming from?
Well, let's text everybody and see.
Sorry, Mike.
I'm sorry. Apparently, I don't know how this happened, but there's a Sigur Rós song playing on my phone. I don't even know where it came from. I don't even think I have that song on my list.
If it was my wife upstairs, I would cut it out. But it's not my wife upstairs. It's you, so I'm not cutting this out.
No, I'm just subtly raising my own background music, doing Foley in the background. That makes what I'm saying seem more important.
It was nice music.
That's awesome.
It was nice. But
okay, so I'm going to get to my burning question.
Yeah.
Now that I know how to take apart a mud bubble, a mud dome, what the hell is a trilobite?
Yeah, that's a good question. A lot of people don't know what they are. So a trilobite is essentially a marine invertebrate that they sort of look like a pill bug, but that's
what's a pill bug?
Like a woodlouse. You know the little guys that roll
just
up?
a second. What's a woodlouse?
Oh my God, man.
We're digging a huge hole
What's
here.
an arthropod?
Yeah. Holy frick.
If you've ever seen like decaying wood, and those little gray guys, they're kind of round and they roll up in a ball real tight.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
You're saying sure, Andrew, but you're kind of
but they're real tiny.
Yeah, real small.
Real small. Yeah, I think I do know what you're talking about.
That's a woodlouse.
Yeah, so a trilobite is not a woodlouse, but just as a comparison, they're very similar in their sort of in a very superficial way. They're very similar in their body plan. Like they're they got the legs underneath, they got a hard shell on top.
Okay,
but
that's what I do. That's what I've got.
Oh yeah,
my legs are underneath.
Yeah,
hard shell.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So these things, there's no living descendants of them. They died out basically in the Permian period. So essentially when our ancestors were first evolving lungs and getting on land and the first amphibians, the last of the trilobites was dying out. But that said, they were one of the most successful organisms on Earth. They were around in one form or another for about 280 million years.
Wow.
And they died out before the very first dinosaurs. So like it's mind-boggling to think about just the amount of time. So the first trilobites, essentially why they're important in the fossil record is they're one of the first complex organisms that we have record of. And they're shelled. And they had incredibly advanced eyes. The oldest ones are around 530 million years old, so 500 million years old. And really well known from places like Nevada, and there's a lot of stuff coming out of China now too. What's interesting about them is the diversity of the animal. There's been over 21,000 species described, and this is an animal that died before the first dream of anything having lungs. Right?
This is crazy.
This is all stuff that's been described from the fossil record, from people doing the work, and a lot of them, frankly, are dumbasses like me. It's just like, I like this, I'm going to go do this, and other guys pursue the PhD route and go that way and suck the fun out of it. But for most of us, we and try to contribute to the knowledge base there. But over 21,000 species already, and what you see is essentially a trilobite from Latin means three lobes. So the basic body plan is essentially the same for all of those 21,000. There's a head, there's a thorax, and there's a tail. And kind of like a lobster, these things would molt throughout their lifetime. So they'd shed the hard shell as they got bigger, exactly like a lobster does now. And so a lot of what we have on record are these hard fossilized shells that we, essentially can be incredibly well preserved. They almost look like they're still alive, some of these things.
So now the fossilization of the shell, not the animal itself, is that?
In most cases. Now, there's a couple places on Earth that are called, let's see if I have the pronunciation right, because it's a German word, Lagerstadt, which essentially...
I've had that beer.
That's a good one, eh? Lagerstadt, good one. Yeah. So all that essentially means is that the soft tissue is preserved. So I have a really good friend in New York State who runs a world-famous quarry called the Meacher trilobite beds. Basically, the location was lost for 100 years. Long story short, these trilobites preserve with iron pyrite, which actually, these animals they died and were deposited in anoxic mud so quickly that the soft tissue actually fossilized. So you see the gills, you see the legs, the antenna, the eggs, and there's actually some other papers coming out of other morphological features, maybe even differences between male and females, and it's most people don't know about the kind of stuff. Like it's pretty cool though. Like these things are 460 million years old, and the legs are preserved. And this is something that you look at a bug now, and I mean, how long is that going to last?
It's fascinating,
right?
Yeah, but essentially, they're almost always in three lobes. And they're arthropods, and they were all exclusively marine animals.
Oh, really?
So they're underwater.
Yep. And actually, everything was. So for basically until the Permian period, there wasn't really anything going on land. That's plants on land, like no trees.
Really?
Yeah, it was the world was a very different place. And in fact, where a lot of these are found, like the trilobites from Arcona in New York. is probably closer to Brazil at the time, because the land masses have shifted and moved.
Oh, wow.
So not only have these things survived for hundreds of millions of years, they've survived incredibly violent geologic upheaval over hundreds of millions of years and changes in the environment, and we can still go. I can go half an hour from my house and find one of these things.
Really?
Has not seen daylight in almost 400 million years, and that's what I kind of get excited about.
So as you're speaking, you look down to your right and you reference with your hand, but can you pick one up and show us?
So I'll show you two from the Devonian deposits. Now these are ones that I've found and prepared, and we can get into the preparation stuff later, but this one's got a...
Yeah, we can't zoom in on this, but
Okay.
but at least we can show...
Yeah.
And hold it up in front of
almost
as
the
high
camera's
as your,
like
no,
on
as high as your mic.
right here. That's your camera there. Yeah.
There we go. Okay.
Yeah.
So
that's a little bugger in the middle.
yeah, that's him in the middle there, and you'll see all these other little pieces of very similar looking pieces. So these would be molts or shed sections.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
And essentially, those are the parts that the animal sheds in sequence to escape its shell, because it's going to get a little bit bigger, right?
Right.
If you've ever seen a spider molt.
Just turn it just a smidgen like that. Yeah.
So this one's from just west of London, Ontario.
So you find it
Wow.
in a rock, and do you have to cut that piece of rock out of whatever you're doing it?
Yeah, so I usually travel with a little field saw, a little battery-powered guy, but then you have to take it and refine it. So they don't look like this when you find them. And I can actually, I think I do have some photos of raw in the field finds.
Okay. Well, we can probably post a couple of those.
Yeah,
and just people can see them.
Essentially, it looks like almost nothing, and that's where the search image really comes into play, because you're essentially looking at gray on gray,
right?
And you're looking for ridge lines, and you're looking for specific, geometric features that repeat, and that's going to be the thing about trilobites is they have this long axial ridge. Sort of your best ally when you're finding these things is that the fossil itself, even though from a standpoint of what it's made of, it's essentially mineralized from the types of elements that are in the rock around it. So it's really indistinguishable from the rock that it sits in, but by nature of how it fossilizes, it creates a weakness in the rock. So the rock wants to split around the fossil.
Sure.
Which is
Makes
a
sense.
huge advantage, right? Depending on, in this particular case, that they tend to split on the fossil. Now, what normally happens is you end up with half the fossil on one side, half the fossil on the other side. So then I've got to take that in the lab and clamp it together, glue it, work down. And,
to make a presentation similar to this.
To make a repair.
Right.
Now, this particular one, this is really the only one that I've kind of kept for my own collection. When I found this, it was sitting, in a dome, but there was just 3 little ribs poking out. And generally, 99 times out of 100, it's just a section. So it's just a piece of the trilobite. But in this case, it ended up being a complete bug. So you take your chances, and stuff in the lab. You think you may have found, massive amounts of stuff with financial value, and you're driving home like, I got it. And then you get the stuff in the lab, and it's like, fuck. Really? I've got a box of junk rocks that are going in the garden. And, it's just...
and what's the other one over here you have?
So this is the same age, a totally different species. So you'll see, like, even...
Yeah, I can tell the difference.
Yeah, there's a big difference. So this one's very smooth.
Well, I can't.
And, this one's got spines all over it. The cool thing about this era...
And hold it up a little bit.
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's all good.
The cool thing about this particular era, this was the rise of the jawed fish. So this is where fish still didn't really have bones. They had armor and they had cartilage, but they didn't really have bones. But what they did start to grow was mouth plates and jaws. So of course, these things are everywhere. So it's like the snack of the seafloor. So what you see is this sort of arms race.
The snack of the seafloor. Yeah, I love that.
Like a Paleozoic lobster. So, obviously these things would have been everywhere, and it would have been a really good food item. These guys would be, not the bottom of the food chain, but, lower. Essentially, these guys would live on the seafloor and eat little worms and stuff and other soft tissue creatures. But fish started to develop and evolve jaws. So what you see in this time period at the same time as trilobites start to evolve spines.
To keep the damn fish with jaws away.
Yep. So in some cases, really dramatic ones. I'll show you. This one is, in roughly the same time period, also Devonian. But you start to see...
Hold it up a little bit.
So this one will be hard to see on the camera.
They tilt it back. You can just start to see the little spines up.
This one will be hard to see on Spotify and Apple Podcast.
Yeah. So I can definitely send you. I have some pictures on my phone.
Oh, that's fascinating.
So I do. I try to do high-end photography for all this kind of stuff on macro. But what you see when it's zoomed in is that they have a head spine. They've got these elbow spines. They've got spines coming off the spines, and it's never more prevalent. Like this one's from Oklahoma, but a lot of the ones you see from Morocco, it's unbelievable. These things are it's like a pin cushion. It's like Pinhead.
Now,
the animal.
Was that because Moroccan fish have better jaws?
No. It's more of an artifact of the particular elements in that sediment and the certain geologic pressures that it was under. For whatever reason, there's all these the huge sliding scale of variables. But essentially, the point is that incredibly well preserved. So in a lot of cases, trilobites look like shit. Like a lot of stuff in England, it's flattened, and even a lot of stuff here in Canada, it doesn't look all that good. But with Morocco, what you see is a term that gets used a lot is inflation. Mm-hmm. So that's essentially the animal, you're seeing it in its full dimensionality. Oh. So it's not normally what you would see in, again, geologic pressures and time and change and fossilization. Things get squished. Yeah. So, but in Morocco, for whatever reason, we have this incredible preservation where you end up with these fully 3D. And
now, would it have something to do with the temperature of the world over there in Morocco? The temperature of the sediment?
Well, I mean, the interesting thing is it wouldn't be the land mass of what we think of as Earth. At the time, everything would have been like all together, right? So it's not.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, so
the tectonic plates that created continents would have not been what they are today.
Exactly. Yeah. So I mean, there's a bunch of, I'm not a scientist. I'm to quote. I'm not the biggest Joe Rogan guy in the world, but to quote Joe Rogan, I love this quote: "Is I am exactly smart enough to know how stupid I am."
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. So and I always tell people like I'm a digger. Like I don't have PhD after my name. I'm a digger, and I'm an artist. So this is the kind of things I do. But so I believe that there's the Pangea theory, and there's all where the land mass is sort of by tracking the geologic pathway of land masses, they can kind of figure this is essentially one big land mass, and so. Everything would have been so, and essentially in Morocco, the Devonian rocks in Morocco, this trilobite's called a Ketneraspis. Don't worry, there won't be a test on this later. Essentially the same species shows up on the other side of the world in North Africa, and this same, they call it something else because it might be separated by 10 million years, but it's the same. It's the same trilobite. It's got all the same features.
Because at one point they lived together.
Yeah, it's just the land masses have been separated.
Separated, yeah.
Yeah, so you end up seeing that, and I mean, it's why the willfully ignorant of how old the planet is, and stuff like that always annoys me because it's like I don't need to make anything up. The proof is right here in the rocks. Like nobody buried these things for you to find them and try to dissuade
some of those theories are pretty silly. Eh?
Yeah. And they're almost always religiously based, right? Like you've lost before you've even started. Like you can't win against that kind of indoctrination. It's like and a lot of people hate paleontologists. Like we've been my page on Instagram, like we've been shadow banned again and again, and it's these fundamentalist groups are just going after us because they don't like. Yeah. But for me, it just blows my mind because it's like I don't know. I'm not an expert. I don't think anyone's an expert because this is what we sort of think of as a soft science. We don't have any scientists working in the field. There's no biologists working in the field 460 million years ago. So everything, all the conclusions we draw are essentially the very best of educated guesswork. And there's some wonky theories out there from pretty accredited scientists. But, essentially we're working on soft science. We're working with the leavings of something and a very narrow picture of what that would be. Not everything fossilizes, right? So, to go back to the religious fundamentalism, they're always looking for, well, where's the missing link to this? Well, where's the missing link to this? What fills in the gaps between these two hominids? It's like, not everything fossilized, man. The odds of something fossilizing, it's got to be 1,000,000 to 1.
Yeah, but what's interesting is you can always turn those questions around on them and
they
have them offer you any proof.
Yeah, but then their ignorance is it just takes over. I don't have to do that.
No.
I don't know.
Well, that's literally they have a blanket word for faith. Belief in the absence of proof, and it's like and that's fine because I don't go onto Christian forums and
slam them.
Yeah, I just don't. I mind my business. I stay in my lane. I live my life, but when people come for you, it's just like, why? Come on, man. I'm just trying to live my life. I just like these things, like hurting anybody.
Yeah, it's so silly.
Some people have too much time on their hands.
They do. Yeah. There's a definitely one of those XY graphs between time and getting into trouble.
But they also have to justify their faith. They have to justify that they believe in something. Because after, spending 30, 40, 50 years of having a faith, they're not really sure they're going to admit they're wrong.
Yeah, and there's really nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with faith.
Of course not.
It's you can. Yeah. There's a million ways to go in life, and do whatever fulfills you and doesn't hurt anybody else. Like that should be that's it.
That should be
that's
it. Yeah,
it's a really short book.
Yeah,
I like that.
100%.
I like that. A religious text should be just. I think it was Ricky Gervais that said, "Don't be a C word," and that's it. Just don't be a C word. That's it.
Yeah, an even shorter book, and it would be perfect for everybody. Yeah,
believe what you want to believe, but
just mind your own damn business.
Instagram, don't we get messages all the time. It's nuts. But,
I think of the movie business as a boy's dream. And and now we're men working a boy's dream to some degree.
Playing guns for a living.
Yeah, just playing guns for a living and shooting stuff with a camera. Every kid kind of they enjoy doing that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I kind of think of this as a very similar thing.
Absolutely.
You're doing boys sort of
you fell in love with bugs when you were a kid.
Yeah, dinosaurs and bugs and amphibians and whatever it might be. How do you feel about that? That must be...
you're right on the money with that. Like when I was a kid, and I'll be the first person to admit I was a weird kid. My nickname was Nature Boy.
Yeah, you're still weird.
Yeah, still weird. Yeah, good. In fact, I think I've grown weirder.
Maybe that's what we'll put down instead
more
of Mike
comprehensive
Meacher.
Weirdness, right? I try to cover the board. So when I was a kid, I was a small kid and very insular. And I'm not the biggest social creature. Which is funny being a musician. Like, why would you do that? But
which is also funny because I don't think that thing's social anymore either. Anything's stuck in a rock.
They were social animals, though. But they called me Nature Boy as an insult, and I was just like, that's not an insult. I like nature. Like my next door neighbor was hitting frogs with a golf club, and I jumped the fence, rescue this toad with these other teenagers chasing me, and I did stuff like that. So. Sorry, I'm bad at tangents, but my dad grew up in Craigleith, so just outside of Collingwood, and that's right on Georgian Bay. So there's a really famous Ordovician deposit, which is older than the Devonian deposit. So these funky names are essentially names for different slices in time. So, X amount of million years ago. And then, like Jurassic and Cretaceous. And so those are the older time periods, the Devonian, Silurian, Cambrian. So when my dad was a kid, he would find, because they literally lived right on the Seven Seas, right on the beach there. And he would find fossils. And I don't know how it ended up happening, but the ROM would start coming out and looking for my dad, when he was a kid.
Oh,
so
wow.
My grandma likes to say, the ROM guys would come and be like, is David home from school yet? And so, because my dad would take them out and show them, whatever he found. So I'm positive there's stuff in the basement of the ROM that my dad found. So I like to think I'm a second generation fossil.
And for anyone
hunter.
listening
that's cool.
From around the world, the ROM is
the Royal Ontario Museum, which is in Ontario. That's like, that's the... It's looked different over the years. Inside, it is a gorgeous museum, it blew my mind when I was a kid.
Yeah,
and
Bloor Street, Toronto.
Right up to the most recent thing they did just before COVID was the Dawn of Life exhibit, which is a massive exhibit. They had a huge donation from a family to do this exhibit. And essentially it's all about early life. Everyone knows about dinosaurs, everyone knows about saber-toothed cats, and then sort of the rise of humans. But
we got that from the Flintstones.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, where we obviously all lived together and worked with dinosaurs at the factory. This is focusing on that massive period of Earth's history that doesn't really get a lot of public attention. Because, I mean, I've shown these to tens of thousands of people, and the look of glazing that comes over. So I wouldn't be the first guy to say, yeah, let's spend $11 million on an early life exhibit, because I've seen how the public looks at these things. But, you know, that's just my conceit, I guess. But so growing up, I heard about this all the time, because when you're a kid, you like dinosaurs. Like, oh, your dad used to look for fossils, and the ROM would come looking for them. And I remember thinking at one point, it's like, who the fuck would collect trilobites? Just because I didn't get it, right? And then I found my first one, and then it was like full on addiction.
It certainly is interesting.
It is. Yeah, it's fascinating. I didn't know what it was until right now.
Right now, well, yeah.
Yeah. They're the most well-known, not well-known fossil. Like they come in kind of under the radar a little bit, because they are bugs, for one.
Yeah.
They're arthropods. And I mean, they're, it's not a dinosaur. How do you compete with a 75-foot long animal that's got a 30-foot neck kind of thing, you know? But,
yeah,
you know, they're interesting. And they're really interesting because they tell a story about evolution, and they tell a story about, you know, an animal group that just kicked ass for forever.
A long time.
Until they did.
And you say there's 21,000 species of them?
At least. I don't even know what the number is right now. But
how'd you like to be the guy picking that up?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Which is a huge problem,
they're all over
actually.
a table, and he just picks one up. Oh, yeah. And then 10,000 in, he goes, no, I think I've seen this one.
Yeah.
So you'll get...
That's kind of funny.
I think, I'm not sure, again, the science is constantly in flux, and I use that term loosely. But there's 7 to 9 different sort of boxed-in family groups of trilobites based on, you know, certain things like... there's 2 different types of eye types. There's an eye type that's like, kind of like, it's made up of up to 4,000 little tiny lenses. And the lenses are so small you can only see them under, you know, really fine magnification. And then there's another kind.
I can't even believe you can see that.
It's called a schizochrol.
Like, look at how tiny they are. And then they've got 4,000 eye lenses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How tiny?
Totally.
Wow.
And little tiny calcite lenses, like little tiny windows that would reflect light. And, you know, these things had almost a 360 degree of vision. And that's kind of why we know these things were on the menu, right? Like, you can't see behind you if you're having a good time. Like, you know, something is hunting you if you need to see behind you. And that's an evolutionary adaptation. Like, you know, there's always a cost benefit quotient in evolution, where it's like, well, you know, obviously the animal's not in charge of what's happening to it, but, you know, the environment dictates a certain level of specialization for that environment. So almost all these things had this massive range of vision.
So the cost benefit would be that you can see everything, but you look goofy.
Yeah.
They were so, they had really low self-esteem.
Yeah.
They did really well, but, you know, low self-esteem.
Well, I can't help but think that, how do you know that these deposits, that you're not losing one or chipping one away or missing one, or or that they're even there? It's unreal.
Yeah. I always think of it as the best way to think of it is it's a treasure hunt, right? Like, you might win or lose. It's feast or famine. You might find 10 bugs. You might find a multi-plate with 10 bugs on it, which is you know, really impressive.
Well, the one you had like 4 or 5 on there, right?
Actually, I got one here with 13 and a half because...
Oh, my.
Because I fucking cut through one.
Oh.
But you don't know it's there, right? So that's kind of illustrates the point. You don't really know what you have.
Here, hold it up in front of you, Mike. Just so
you don't really know what you have until you've kind of taken it into the lab. And I mean, this is after probably 20 hours in the lab.
And you've got, how many? There's 13 of them in there?
13 and a half. Yeah.
Whoa.
So there's the half guy, and he would have been a really nice bug, but you just don't know what's there. Like, the odds are out there that there's going to be anything on it. But
now, are they all the same one?
In this case, they're all the same except for this poor guy that got smashed by, this is a piece of coral.
Okay.
A rugose coral or a horn coral. So this is actually from way up north, 2 hours north of North Bay, up Highway 11.
Okay.
So we have a spot there where we do a lot of digging, and we've found a couple new species of things. And
yeah, I was going to ask about this this discovery.
Oh yeah, the algae. Yeah, it's funny. We sort of laugh about the algae because it was bycatch. It was the dolphin that ended up on our net when we were looking for something else.
Wow.
But it's interesting because, first of all, algae to preserve the conditions that need to be met for that to happen, because it's a soft tissue, right? It's it should just rot and be gone.
It's a plant.
It's a plant, yeah. And so we started finding this type of plant, and we would see these little root-like tendrils on it, and we were seeing the complete thing. It kind of looked like a hand. And so,
and this is a fossil you're looking at. That's this fossil, point, right?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So it's like a carbonized fossil, and but it should have rotted, but the conditions were right so that the soft tissue preserved. So we reached out to another a friend who's written a book on the subject, and he kind of helped champion. He opened the door as a go-between us and a researcher. So. Not to go too far off subject, but essentially there's a real disconnect between guys like me and guys that work at universities as researchers working with this type of material. Not to put too fine a point on it, they hate people like me.
Okay.
Because I'm doing it
That's
commercially,
a fine point.
right? So it's I'm doing it commercially, but the reality is that museums don't have the budget, and frankly, they don't have good field work. They did back in the 80s and 90s. Now, I don't know what goes on. I think they put all their money into the Burgess Shale stuff. But, the researchers aren't producing the specimens. Guys like me are producing the specimens. And so, it gets a little frustrating because these guys treat you like shit. And, so we had a go-between that was sort of halfway between collector and academic, to kind of bridge the gap between us and a researcher named Stephen LaDuca at the University of Michigan. And we sent him well, we think we found something new. Like, do you know what this is? And he works with plants, like Paleozoic plants. And he looked at it, he's like, well, this isn't just a new species, it's a whole new genus, which is massive.
Wow.
Okay,
So
this is absolutely fascinating. But how did you know? Like, when you found it, it's like, I'm sorry, I'm going back to that 21,000. What?
Like, what rang the bell?
Like rang the bell, yeah.
Like, this guy looks at 21,000 bugs and says, oh yeah, this one's different. You've seen this stuff, and I forgive my ignorance because I have no idea. If I saw a plant, I don't know if that's different from that one.
Right.
What made you think for a second that this might be something new?
It was so different from anything we'd seen. And basically what we were seeing was this one species called Thalassocystis, is a type of algae from the Silurian era. So 444 million years.
Just define each one of those words.
Okay, so this plant it's real freaking old, right? And you got this plant, and it looks really freaking different from this plant. And it's like, that's a new thing.
Okay, now let's have a beer.
No, bring it.
So there's not a lot of plant material from the Silurian era. Like, you're talking about the earliest plants. So they're convinced it's algae, but like, I look at these things and like, I'm a dumbass. I just find the stuff, right? But I look at it and it's like, man, this thing looks like a Christmas tree. It looked like a deciduous tree, like with little tines on it, and really, really fine looking plant. But we were only seeing this one type of algae called Thalassocystis, and apparently it's been previously described from rocks in Michigan. So they've determined that basically the basis of the paper was going to be describing a new type of Thalassocystis, cystis algae. God, it's hard to say even for me. And
Thalassocystis?
Thalassocystis. You nailed it, Randy.
Thank you.
And so it was determined that when Steve did the research on it, that it was basically indistinguishable from the kinds that were already known. And so we didn't have a new species. We just found really, really good, complete specimens of this plant. So we found this other thing, which is not the same thing. And that was like holy shit, this is something totally new.
Wow.
And so what Steve did for us is he brought us in as authors on the paper. And there is no definition more loose than describing me as an author on a scientific paper. So, I love it. Me and my high school degree are gonna, an accredited author on a scientific paper published by the Cambridge University Press. And so it's kind of cool. But Steve did he did all the research. And if you read this thing, it's.
If someone wants to read it, it's
got a lot of fiber in it.
Yeah. How can people read this?
So that's a good question. So I do have a link to it, and I think they're charging I think it's like $30 to get the paper.
Okay. Well, somebody out there might want to spend $30.
Okay. Can I send you a link?
Yeah.
I'll send you a link to the paper because it is behind a paywall. We did get a copy of it. But so what Steve did for us, we were on as authors, and so the sort of interesting thing about being an author is it's a lot of science street cred, but you don't get to name it. So if you're an author on the paper, you don't get to name it. So it was named for a professor in emeritus of macrobiology at the university, probably a colleague of Steve's, but the name ended up being Earltonella fredericksi. Earltonella fredericksi. So new species, new genus. It was just really cool. I mean, it's an algae, so you could make a point like, well, it's not a dinosaur, but it's still
whatever.
Yeah, whatever. But what we really want to do is work with, and there's only basically everyone that's working in invertebrate paleontology. They're busy. They're busier than they want to be, and there's not a lot of money in this thing. It's a lot of it is, and that's where some of the indignance comes between the academic and the commercial.
But isn't that where it's beautiful to have someone like you who's just literally, this is a hobby and an
I want
interest.
to share this with you guys. I don't want to sell it to you. I want to donate this. Like to put it on the table, we donated everything that he needed to publish that paper. And I was happy to do it, and I'll do it again in a heartbeat. But what we really want to do is describe a trilobite. And we found, some full specimens of a new kind of trilobite,
really,
that we would love to work with some research on. But it's tough. You gotta, you're talking about years. Most of these projects are multi-year. Like I think it took almost 2 years for the algae paper, and we had to shut up about it. And not that not that the London press was knocking down my door.
So you found this a while ago.
Yeah, we found it. Basically, what happened was...
honestly, I thought you went up north, did a thing, and then the next day you were like, I found a thing.
and then he's on,
yes,
he's on stage. He's on stage with his guitar, and he says to the audience, "You'll never guess what I found yesterday."
Yeah.
And then one guy in the back's like, "Hey, I'm a researcher of Paleozoic botany.
That'd have been beautiful.
Work with you."
Yeah.
Okay, I still have questions. This thing that you found, it doesn't exist anymore in the world?
It has. There's similar things still alive today, but whether it's a direct descendant or a product of what do they call that? Convergent evolution, where it's like you end up with the same result under different circumstances. Like there's a joke in evolutionary biology that everything turns into a crab at some point, and there's a lot of humor about that.
So you found it here in Ontario.
Yep.
Does it exist, or did it exist anywhere else in the world?
Presumably, yes, because again, those land masses would have been close
together.
Sure,
that makes sense. Okay.
But so basically, for anything to fossilize, there's thousands of variable conditions that need to be met, and then some, Homo sapiens has got to look at that and find it, right? It's like there's so many things that lead up to finding a formation that these things survive at all is a miracle. So the conditions were right here, and even though this thing might have been all over the continent, maybe it didn't preserve anywhere else, right? Because nowhere else had the right conditions.
Like there's a chance that there's organisms and things out there that just cease to exist anymore.
Oh yeah, we have no, and in fact, the bulk of all life that has ever existed on the planet, we have no record of. It's all, again, it's a soft science. We weren't there.
And then it goes to like what he was saying. How'd you know when you saw this that it was different? And I'm thinking like you kind of rubbed over that question in a way that it was like, well, it looked different. And it's like, well, aren't there thousands or millions of these things, and 100 million textbooks on all this stuff?
Yeah, like how many have you seen to know that it was different? I guess
like that's crazy.
So in a lot of cases, a formation the conditions might only be right for a couple of things, a couple of species in a whole ecosystem of animals to preserve, right? So you got to think this was an ocean environment. It's mostly a shallow ocean environment. There would have been, like today's environment. You go on a coral reef, you're looking at tens of thousands of animals all kind of living in cooperation with each other to a certain extent. And normally in a fossil situation, you might end up with, even in an area big as the GTA. Underneath the GTA is the Ordovician limestone rocks, like just chock full of stuff. You can't get to it anymore because Toronto's on it.
I was going to ask about that.
and lawyers exist, and that's a thing that is, we can talk about later. But you might have 10 or 13 trilobite species that are found in this one formation. That's not to say that there was only 10 or 13 existing at the time. That's that's the snapshot we have. So it's kind of like the fossil record's sort of like walking down a street and taking a Polaroid of things and then trying to write an entire research paper based on that photograph. It's like, well, these are the only things that I can see, so this is all that existed. No. It's just a snapshot. So there was really only two kinds of algae that we've seen. So we've seen this one kind again and again and again and again called Thalassocystis. And then we found one. So we'd seen basically thousands of this one kind. And then we found one of the other kind, and it was so different that it was like, my partner at the time, Mark, we looked at each other. It's like, what the fuck is this?
Wow!
What a trip!
Yeah.
So I mean, I want to draw you. I can draw it on here.
Here, take a piece of paper.
So I'll do a really basic drawing of a comparison of the two things. Kind of looks like I'm just drawing a pot leaf.
Yeah, it does, exactly. For anyone that's not seeing this.
It looks,
a pot leaf with a Christmas tree under it.
Yeah.
Well, this is fascinating. This is the first time anybody drew a picture in the podcast before they signed the table.
I'm a visual person. I tend to simultaneously under and over explain things. Two concepts can exist simultaneously when I'm talking away.
It just blows my mind that.
Okay.
So two, very, very, very different. I don't want to say body plan, but essentially the structures, the biological structures of the organism are totally different. So the one on the left, the pot plant looking one. Oh, trilobites like to party. Do you guys know that? Everything else was Pangea, but Columbia was still there, baby. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, baby.
The Thalassocystis is on the left, and the Earltonella is on the right. So, both algae, both very, very some of the earliest plant life on Earth.
So there's two of them here.
So two. Those are the two species. So left and right. So
which one did exist before that you knew of?
The one on the left.
This one. And this is the bugger you found. No one on Earth even
no one had ever
existed.
seen it before. Yeah. And they did a scanning electron microscope on it. And
how often does this happen?
This is exciting stuff, man.
People find stuff all the time, but it's the science side, because science it's a slow moving machine, and you've got a lot of researchers involved. You got egos, you got grants. It's slow moving machinery, and it.
Well, speaking of that, you said Toronto. Look at America. It's full of major cities. There's major cities all over the earth, but you can't get under these things.
Yeah. And in fact, like the large quarries, so that's what I'm saying. The only people that win are the lawyers. There's two major factors that hold someone like me back. The first is that you're never, ever, ever going to get into these big quarries. So there's a massive hypocrisy with this stuff, and people get away with it because no one really knows about trilobites. Not really. So these massive quarries grind up probably hundreds of thousands of these things every day to do road fill and to do driveways.
Oh man, that's interesting.
And you can't, me as a collector, even with hard hat and all the gear, I can't get in because there's too much liability. Like some multi-million-dollar operation is not going to let some guy, can I look for fossils in your quarry? Maybe a ma and pa one, but there's no liability release form that actually releases companies from culpability if I go and do something stupid and get hurt in their quarry.
Yeah.
And they're always operating. Some of these quarries operate 24/7.
So any quarry?
Most quarries, yeah, they're all under the Aggregates Act of Ontario. So there's, again, you can find the odd ma and pop quarry where you go in, you meet the person that owns it, you tell them what they're doing, and oftentimes they're like, "Oh man, I've never even heard of this. I see these things on the rocks, but most people don't think about it." It's like it's bottom line. Everyone's got to eat. So you're thinking, well, that this is what I do. I quarry rock and I sell it to developers and construction companies. But for me, it's sad. You can't get access to these things, and I'm always looking for anyone that might know somebody that owns a quarry that's going to let me in and take a look. As soon
as a drill goes into the concrete, you go
Well, if there's anyone out there that knows of a ma and pa quarry, where we can send you, they can contact us through our Instagram.
I'm like a vampire. You have to invite me in first. So so there's a kind of a funny anecdotal story about the Bowmanville quarry, that massive quarry. So they used to let people in twice a year on an extremely limited area that you could go look, and only when the quarry wasn't active. That became once a year, and then COVID happened, and we're never getting back in there. It's done. And the amount of hoops that the organizers had to jump through to make that happen was crazy. But we heard from the workers there that there's these massive trilobites called Isotelus, and they're up to a foot long.
No kidding. This thing?
Yep.
These bugs?
Oh yeah, one like this. So imagine just that size, and fully 3D, huge eyes, just incredible world-class fossils. And guys working in the quarry, you've seen the massive rock crushers, those conveyor belts that go up. So the workers, not knowing anything about it other than I work at a quarry and I crush rocks, they see these things going up the conveyor belt, and it's like, there goes another turtle. They call them turtles because it kind of, sort of basically looks like a turtle shell. So these are the things that keep me up at night. It's like, there goes another turtle. And really, like, I don't want to say prices or anything because I don't want people getting any ideas in their heads. This is a labor of love. But, like, you're talking about not just scientifically valuable, because every museum in the world should have one of these things. And they would have one if we could be rational about, letting people in and digging these things out. Or at least stopping the crusher for 5 seconds. Let me get that thing off the conveyor belt. You know what I mean?
And where's this one?
So this one's in Bowmanville.
Okay, wow.
And it's a massive, massive operation. But it cuts through... I think the quarry has 7 levels, and every level has some kind of trilobite fauna on it. So there's the Verulam Formation, the Botcage, and goes up through, and there's some incredibly, incredibly rare trilobites that, in the very, very limited amount of time I've had in that quarry, we found some incredibly rare things.
Okay, and so anybody out there listening, Bowmanville,
come on, let me in Bowmanville.
We want access.
That must have been a cool experience.
I'll put on a free concert at your quarry.
That'd be cool.
But I have a rider. Give me those turtles.
Yeah. Man, wow.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, it's just funny. It's just,
now, would they be the biggest trilobite?
No. The biggest one, now, if any fossil guys listen to this, I'll probably take shit for at least 17 points on this. But there's something called a terataspis, which allegedly got up to, I think the biggest ones might have been even up to 3 feet.
Oh, wow. And this is a bug.
It's a bug, yeah, an ocean bug. Like not dissimilar from a lobster or any crustacean.
Now, are lobsters bugs?
Technically, yes. Yeah. I mean,
bug there
is
goes that
massive,
next meal.
Bug is a massive word, yeah.
That's why they call it the cockroach of the sea. I know people call it the chicken of the sea, but cockroach of the sea.
Wow.
Yep. Bottom feeder, yeah.
God, I can go for a lobster tail.
Yeah.
I think
the government wants you eating bugs. So
true. I guess.
I can only imagine the upper class. More steak for us. Let them eat bugs.
Yeah.
Let the plebs eat bugs.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Speaking of plebs, Graham Hancock. Are you a fan?
Who did?
Do you know Graham Hancock? Okay. I guess I'm not sure what his title is exactly, but he's been on Joe Rogan, speaking of which, a few times. Okay. I think 9 times according to his last podcast. But he talks about the human race and civilization, and how most archaeologists only go back so far, and how he has found evidence of the human race existing far before it, and different civilizations and all this kind of stuff. But he can't find certain things because archaeologists don't necessarily like him, and they just choose to disagree with him for whatever reason that might be. And I imagine that this is an issue across all this stuff, finding dinosaur bones, finding history, is there anyone who is up at the top, scientists perhaps, anyone trying to discourage someone like you or paleontology at all from let's say, dismembering something that we already know as a human race, or something that's already being taught, or a curriculum? Right. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's there's a lot of meat to that. How do I answer that? So the science is based on the most current information, and it's always in flux. And good science is constantly evolving based on the latest data we have. And the problem with science is that science is carried out by people, and people are fallible. People have egos. People have ambitions. They have biases. So inherently, like, we're terrible as a species for agreeing on anything. So some of the most vitriolic and hateful shit happens among people that are in the same field, but they disagree on a point. It's like, and trilobites, I often find the culture around it very frustrating, because what trilobite guys do is just fight with other trilobite guys. We're arguing over something that is essentially a blue sky interest, right? It has no bearing. They're not going to pop out and cure cancer. We're talking about a niche interest that's fascinating, and it tells us about the history of our planet. But you got guys that are very, very passionate about their opinion and their bias, and this goes here and that goes there, and you see that all over science. Science is so full, and as a younger guy and as a kid, I idolized scientists, biologists, people doing the work, and dedicating their life to the furthering of human knowledge, the knowledge base for our species. But then you start to meet these guys, and you realize that, man, this is all bullshit. We're all fighting over everything, and no one can agree on anything. And on the point of a guy like Joe Rogan and the types of people he has on his show, it's interesting, right? Mm-hmm. And science isn't always interesting. Facts aren't always interesting, as we know from, just pick something out of the air, the political climate in the U.S. Truth does not matter in our society anymore. All that matters is having a strong and heated opinion about something, and that you got to fight with other people, and then other people see that, and they're like, well, all of a sudden that's sexy. That's interesting. Like, no, this guy's against the world here. Like, he might be a crackpot. He might be completely wrong, but when you don't know enough about the other source materials, we all get drawn into that. It's almost like a reality TV show. It's not real. It's not real science that's being argued. We're arguing about opinions and ambition and wanting attention. And so I think people are fallible, which makes science fallible. So, if archaeologists are cutting this guy out, I bet they're probably just too busy fighting with each other. No one can agree on anything. In science, in government, in human relations, we're really antagonistic as a species. So
big time, man.
So I don't know. I hope that answers your question a little bit.
No, it does. It does.
People have their opinions, and right or wrong. And like I said before, people won't admit they made mistakes. If I tell you that this is the truth of what my science is for the last 35 years, and then you go out into the desert and discover something.
Yeah, you get defensive about
it. Please don't even talk to me, because mine's right. I can't admit now that I've been wrong for 35 years.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about relatively, we're moving at lightning pace when it comes to our understanding of the world around us. And, if you think it's a blink of an eye, in 100 years, basically at the turn of the century, in the early 1900s, late 1800s, early 1900s, the Bone Wars. I don't know if you've ever heard about these two idiots.
The Bone Wars?
Yeah, Cope and Marsh. These two paleontologists, naturalists, basically rich boys that went out and looking for dinosaurs. They were in competition with each other to find the most dinosaur species. So you're talking about these two idiots, and they would hire thugs to go into each other's camps, destroy their finds, plant finds, steal finds, really, really sordid. And essentially, you still see that same behavior done in a different way today. And it's so pathetic, and it's crazy. But this is the history. This is the birthing pain of the field of paleontology. Like, this is where, this is where these idiots come from. It's, but it all comes to human ego, and So for me, I try to, I enjoy it for enjoyment's sake, and I got roped in early on. Everyone wants to fight with you and argue, and I found that it's just better to just enjoy the thing for its sake than to die on a hill that means nothing to nobody, and you just look like an idiot.
Well, I mean, what's the point of all this if you're not going to enjoy it? What's the sense of even discovering anything or writing it down or anything?
Yeah,
anything at all if it's not worth enjoying. So
some of the specific work that goes into they're taking measurements and they're describing new species because this cephalic rim is 1 millimeter wider, therefore it's a new species. Like, okay, bud, that's fine, but I'm not gonna post about it on the internet. I'm not gonna start fights with strangers because I feel so passionately. I'm passionate about the passion for it, for its own sake, not trying to improve my status in the paleontological community or anything like that. It's
So this algae you found, and then has it been widely accepted in the paleontological world?
Yeah. So Cambridge University Press, it went in. Oh my God, the Journal of Paleontology published it. So it's in the scientific jargon. It's out.
It's pretty badass.
It's a thing that's out there, and I mean,
do you have a tattoo of it?
No. I did joke about
some on the lower back.
My wife wanted to get it, but the specimens we found, they're the only ones there are, but they're still pretty scrappy, right? It's
So you found, how big is this specimen?
This one, I would say the whole plant is about that big.
4 inch.
Okay.
Yeah, about like 12, 13 centimeters.
And you found
across.
one?
Okay. I think we found 3 plates of these things.
Okay.
Yeah, in total. And I've still got one at the lab that I got to cut down. But, it really doesn't look like much, but it's cool that it's something new. And
absolutely.
That's awesome.
And they're very rare. Like, we find them like 1,000 to 1 from one species to this new one.
So what are the chances you're going to find this thing again?
As long as we keep going up there, very good. Yeah, I mean, it's a numbers game. You just keep going. Like I was out digging on Wednesday, and I got into the ravine, and everything was full of snow and ice. I'm like, oh shit. I find a rock, split it open, trilobite, first hit, never happened before. Found a good trilobite. The next 800 rocks that I split, nothing, not a goddamn thing.
Wow.
So it's it's a numbers game. You just the only way you're for sure not going to find something is if you just stop looking.
Sure. Now I think of the one guy who's digging and he goes through a bone and fuck. Fuck.
Oh yeah. So you mentioned that earlier. Oh man, does it happen? Like, and honestly, the type of rock where this comes from in Arkona, this stuff essentially sits absorbing water, because where you find this stuff is where like a stream or a river will cut through the formation, and now it's exposed on the banks, right? So a lot of this formation, it's mostly under farmers' fields because it's all farmland out there. So you can't farm in ravines, and if farmers could, there would be crops in ravines, but they can't. So and that's often where you find these things. So they're very fragile. So they're wet. It's wet rock. when you split them open, this thing has been trapped in the rock for hundreds of millions of years. The pressures that it's under, when you release it, pieces go flying like birthday confetti. And
wow, really?
So part of my job is putting these things back together piece by piece under a microscope. And
wow,
it's a pain in the ass.
Unbelievable,
I love
man.
it, but it's a pain in the ass.
There's birthday confetti.
I like to think that in my that was the visual I had.
That's good.
Well, that's a trip. Are there paleontological whatever tourists, like just the average person on the weekend going out banging away?
So actually, that's one thing that I get a lot of messages over is do you ever chaperone trips? And my answer is always hell no. But I always, and anyone that messages me with questions, I always, and I usually end up spending like 40 minutes. I always spend like 40 minutes writing a huge, long, helpful email, and they usually never even say thanks. But I always refer people to joining their local fossil and mineral club.
Sure.
Because what that will do for you is they will have access to sites, private sites, that would be normally the difference between a trespasser and being there legally is usually being attached to a fossil club. That's usually the difference.
That makes sense.
So and that's how I started, and that's where you meet like-minded people, and you can kind of decide it doesn't have to be this. It can be, I want to take my kids out there for a weekend, and you can do that kind of thing.
But the sites that are legal that the fossil clubs have access to would be pretty much picked over. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. And yes, they are.
So let's go do something illegal.
So you're trying to discover these things while trying to discover the right geographical location.
Yeah.
I imagine it feels like the world has been run, like,
everything's
poked
fenced,
and prodded.
Yeah, everything's fenced. Everything's owned. The waterways, that's one sort of way to circumvent the legality, is that there's certain laws involving waterways and stuff that, it's crown land. But really, I would say that, the type of commercial paleontology that I do is barely tolerated, and it's only legal and a gray area legal in Ontario and Quebec. Every other province, it's basically illegal to take anything, right? And
what's the point of that? You go out in the crown land. I mean, you just
this is the problem with commercial versus academic. The academics don't believe that we should be allowed to have anything. You're a pleb. You don't have a PhD. You didn't go to school for this. You don't deserve to have it. You can't have it. You can't sell it. We don't want you to, even if it's a species that they've got. There's types of trilobites. They've got tons of them at the ROM. Like, we've learned all we can from this species. We really have, but people don't like that I find them. And the difference between is those who do and those who sit around on their computer and complain. I go out in the field and dig. And so the advantage I have is that I'm willing to do the prison work to get down to the rock, to split the rock. And I have some good relationships with some of the farmers out there, and I've got permission to go on their land and do this kind of thing.
What about mines?
Mines, so especially in Canada, like that rock is so much older, Precambrian, so older than the first life forms on Earth. So types of granite and, or if they're quarrying other types of minerals, usually those two things don't come into each other.
Okay.
Where they do cross paths is, in South America, like phosphate mines. Sometimes they'll find like Miocene stuff, like big megalodon teeth and things like that they might find. But typically, as it relates to what I do, mining and fossils don't really cross paths.
Okay.
Now, the Temiskaming area where we've been working this project, and we found that a new kind of trilobite and a new that Earltonella algae. That area is famous for its mining. Obviously, they found a ton of gold up there. There's a massive gold operation. Temiskaming gold. I can't remember what it's called, but they got a massive plant up there, and diamonds too, way up north. But that never crosses paths with me.
Okay. A friend of mine owns an amethyst mine.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So I've just
up in near Bancroft or something.
Somewhere up north.
Yep. Cool.
But I could get access if, in fact, you can find stuff there. But if not,
no, amethyst. It would be cool to find amethyst. I'm not really a mineral guy, but I've heard that from a really well known trilobite guy who's a friend of mine. he runs this soft tissue quarry out of New York, but he also does a lot of stuff looking for garnets and other types of panning for gemstones.
Mm-hmm.
And he says it's like the thrill is just to find stuff. It's off the charts because that stuff's actually worth money.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So I've always been interested. I always want to try gold panning sometime, but and that would be the place to do it up north. But again, like you're into all the same issues.
You can do it at the carnival.
Yeah, maybe I will. I just pay for a bucket of sand, and they already know there's like 6 flakes of gold in there.
Right.
$20, please.
And it's not real. This is fascinating.
It is incredibly fascinating.
Oh, right on.
Does the diving, when you go, because you're really into diving. I've seen all your pictures and stuff. Beautiful stuff. Obviously nature boy in every way, in every manner. Do you look for things when you're out doing that? You said you found some stuff.
Yep.
Okay, so you're always looking, whether you're underwater or on land.
Yep, always looking. I mean, you can find some cool stuff when you're diving, especially shallow diving. Like I found, you find like a stingray barb like this, and it's just sitting there, and you tuck it into your BCD.
Okay, so speaking of illegal, is that legal when you're underwater?
Well, obviously I didn't take it home, Randy. I wouldn't do something like that.
No, of course not. You put it back.
I put it back. Actually, I did the responsible thing in today's very eco-sensitive. I found the stingray that it came off of, and I glued it back on.
Good.
And and I sent him on his way. A little pat on the bum.
Did he say thank you?
He did. It was kind of like a little, they got it like a frill, so it's kind of like a, a nod.
Yeah. I've seen that.
Makes perfect sense.
Very, very ecologically responsible. Yeah.
Right on.
Wicked. Okay, good. Well, that's fascinating. I don't know where to go with this. It's crazy. There's so many avenues.
So with diving and fossils, I've been on tour, and it's taken me to Florida a couple times when I was with Mudmen, and they do charters for finding. Are you familiar with the megalodon?
Well, I thought it wasn't real. I thought it was made up for Jurassic Park.
He saw the movie.
Whatever it was. Yeah.
Yeah, the Meg with Jason Statham. Yeah,
I can't believe that it's real. Okay.
Yeah, it's a real animal. They're probably not as big as the original estimates. The original estimates were like, this thing's like 70 feet long, and probably more like 45, 50 feet, which
that's still pretty big.
Yeah, it's kind of like, it's only a 14-inch machete that went through my neck.
It's a big fish.
Well, you can't put it in a tank and put it in your room.
Exactly.
Sure.
No, not for long anyway. But you can charter these trips, and they take you out to dive sites, and it's called muck diving, low visibility diving. Essentially, you find them with your hands. You can't see anything, or silt diving. What a lot of guys do is they'll take an underwater scooter, and they'll point the scooter fan at the sediment,
just load the sediment up.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
But I've booked dive trips to do this meg hunting twice on both tours that took me down there, and both times the cold front came in, and so one day I'm going to do the meg diving trip. But that's sort of the combination of fossil hunting and diving and sharks too. Like, come on,
hell yeah,
can't lose there.
So no, if you were to do the meg diving, and I find that the theme of the Mudmen, the muck, and the little mud huts.
I found that interesting as well.
It's all about the muck.
All about the muck, getting dirty.
If you find a megalodon tooth under the silt, do you get to keep that?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
How big is a megalodon tooth?
Oh man, it varies.
45, 50 foot shark.
What you want to find? I mean, there's the Holy Grail tooth. It's the one that everyone posts pictures of, but only so many people find. And I'll tell you what, it's kind of like anything else in collecting. You don't give away your sites. Right. So everybody wants to get into this kind of thing, and I used the term everybody pretty loosely here in the context. Everybody that likes fossils wants to find a big fossil. But I think the largest megalodon tooth ever found was just a little over 7 inches. So that's like over a pound.
That is a huge
over a pound, and it's massive, just a massive tooth. But on average, most probably like 3 inches, 3 to 4 inches is kind of what you'll find. And in a lot of cases, these things have been sitting on the ocean floor for 1 million, 2 million years. A lot of times they're heavily damaged,
Megalodon.
Yeah, massive.
Man,
it's a big boy.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And if you
and he's got several of them in his mouth.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, up to 300. Yeah.
Wow.
Now, have we found anything that we thought was dead and is still alive today?
Well, the most famous example is, of course, the coelacanth, which
The
is a really
coelacanth?
coelacanth.
Okay.
It's not a coelacanth; it's a coelacanth.
Can't.
It's got a lisp.
Coelacanth.
It's got a lisp. Yeah.
Okay.
Coelacanth.
And what is that?
It's a massive fish, incredibly primitive. We have some on the fossil record, and I think it was in the 40s. Some longline fishermen found one. And since several have been found, but
Okay.
yeah,
Alive.
alive. We thought they were extinct, and they ended up.
And what are the
being,
chances something like this could happen again?
So the term that a lot of paleontologists hate is the term living fossil. I mean, humans get around, but the ocean floor is kind of like the last undiscovered country a little bit, where there's still a possibility of things like. It stands to reason that no one's probably going to find a trilobite or a megalodon, but there might be some stuff that we haven't seen yet that could be down there. I mean, one of the Earth has had a pretty wild history of extinction events. There's been 5 major extinction events, and one of the theories is that the acidification of the oceans is something that wiped out, the end of the Permian period, massive extinction event. Something like 80% of all life wiped out. So what's left has to evolve and change to suit its environment, and then basically paves the way for all these new species to come in and change and evolve. But there's certain theories again that where. Sorry, I thought I heard seagulls for a second. Maybe it's because I'm talking about the ocean. What the hell's it going on? Oh, so for instance, squid and octopus.
Okay.
They have a lot of. They're descended from,
aliens.
Species that lived. Yeah, that's one of the theories. Honestly, maybe they're totally bizarre. One of my favorite things is octopus and watching them in the wild. But
wow.
A lot of octopus squid ancestors had shells. And none of our modern day ones have like true shells. There's some species of octopus that produce like an egg case and things like that. And a lot of cuttlefish will actually have a remnant of that shell called a cuttle bone that's inside the body that people don't really know what the hell it's for, but it's actually a holdover, an evolutionary holdover from them. And the theory is that a lot of these animals went to way deeper water to escape the acidification, and they changed to suit their environment. And
wow.
As conditions became favorable again, life moves wherever there's nature hates a vacuum, and so does power. But that's essentially what the hell was the question? I'm bad for tangents.
Oh man, I don't even know anymore. I'm just interested in what you're saying.
Who is this person?
Yeah.
I think I don't know what we were talking about, but that's fascinating that they would go deeper to get away from the acidification of the water.
That's one of the theories. I'm not going to die on that hill, but PBS did a very compelling special on it.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's great.
PBS.
Yeah, why did cephalopods lose their shells? Something to that effect. And
that is really neat.
It's a really compelling theory, and it's and you see a lot of deep sea cephalopod species that didn't come back into shallow water. And some of these things they dive deep, like thousands of feet below, into the midnight zone of the ocean.
There's got to be stuff down there that is just mind bending.
Oh yeah,
I would imagine. Yeah,
well, even like a squid, like these giant squid, like they got like an eyeball like this. It's
yeah.
Just, the Humboldt squid, they come out, they come thousands of feet up out of the water column to feed at night in the Sea of Cortez, and and they'll attack divers and stuff too. If you dive with them, you have to wear a shark suit because they attack divers.
Wow,
it's cool what's down there. It's again like
it sounds really cool.
There's a combination.
Nuts, man.
There's a combination of nature show going the reality route and blowing things out of proportion. A great example is dart frogs. It's like just 1 milligram of this toxin will kill 10 adult men. It's like, yes, refined in a lab and injected directly into his neck.
Okay.
But the frog, you can touch the frog and you're not going to die, provided you don't wipe it on a open wound. But it's just nature is terrifying for different reasons, and usually not the way that nature shows present them. But Humboldt squid, honestly, give me a bit.
Well, you have to do that on Nature Show, otherwise it won't sell.
That's right, yeah, because you got to appeal to the general public, and the general public's not interested in nature. Not really. Not really.
Yeah, but they're interested in a frog that can kill you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's true. But that's the same reason they're not necessarily interested in trilobites, but they're interested in raptors and
dinosaur. People love a predator.
Yeah. Big teeth and tearing stuff apart. Yeah.
How many kids say their favorite dinosaur is a Diplodocus or an Ankylosaurus or something? It's like, no, man, it's a velociraptor.
Most kids can't say those words. So what did a trilobite eat?
So we don't know for sure. Again, no one was there. But the very compelling theory is that they probably ate like nematodes, like little soft-bodied worms. Another theory is that they may have been filter feeders to a certain extent, just like modern-day crabs and lobsters are filter feeders to a certain extent.
Explain to me filter feeder.
So if you've ever seen videos of crabs, they kind of reach out these little fronds. They look like feathery little appendages, and they're actually catching things out of the water column. So there's all these nutrients that come in and float around with the tide, plankton, like tiny like micronutrients that they sort of catch in these little comb-like structures. So that's another possibility with trilobites.
Okay. Now I imagine that the stuff that trilobites is eaten, is that stuff as interesting to anyone as the trilobite?
The problem is it generally doesn't fossilize because 99% of the time, actually probably more than 99.9% of the time.
Did you know that about 87% of all percentages is made up on the spot?
I'm 100% sure that's true, actually. Please, nobody check my figures. Let me have this. What the hell were we talking about?
Just the food. Yeah.
The food. Yeah. So a lot of these, generally when things fossilize, it's the hard parts that fossilize.
Yeah.
Right? So
that makes sense.
It's the shell of the trilobite. So my buddy Marcus, he's made incredible contributions to paleontology, and he's based out of New York. He runs this the Meacher site, and I've got to go down there and dig that site, and it's a world famous site. He finds, not all the time, but he does find these soft-bodied worms, polychaete worms, so like armored worms, and basically soft tissue fossils of some of these microorganisms that normally don't get preserved in the fossil record. So he's found all kinds of new stuff. Wow. Just working a soft tissue site. Yeah.
Wow.
So sure, they're interesting, but trilobites are a severe niche interest in the niche interest of paleontology. If you're into Paleozoic worms, like I can't imagine you and the other 5 guys that are constantly arguing.
Yeah, I just wonder the importance of this stuff.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know.
To me, in my opinion, and it's only my opinion, is because a lot of these guys, like it's almost religious. Like they're so into this stuff, and its importance. For me, I always think it's a blue sky interest. I think it's important to know about where we came from and the history of this planet, but look at us as a species. We can't agree on anything. We're awful.
Yeah.
Again, I don't want to get in the habit of quoting Joe Rogan, but he did this one comedy special, and he's like, "Have you ever looked at LA from the air?" And he's like, "Have you ever looked at mold on a piece of bread? It's the same thing. Like it's this spreading mold, and that's humanity too, and that's us." Yeah. And it's just like, well, who's going to care about this beautiful little 460 million year old worm when you can't even get Bubba to throw his Tim Hortons cup in the friggin' garbage? So it's
right.
I think everything's relative. And do I think it's important? Yes. Do I blame anyone for not finding it's important? No. It's just it's whatever you're into.
But we've also I have nothing to do with it. But I'm sure that things have been found that are beneficial to the world. Cures for diseases, different plants.
Oh yeah, yeah. Especially. I mean, it's questionable because I think a lot of pharmaceutical companies have a lot of operations going on in South America. There's been some, I don't want to cite any particular events just in case I don't have them correct, but there's been a lot of severely unethical conduct. But, that specifically South America, but mostly with living things, because there's only so much you can learn from something that's dead. and something that's essentially a photograph of what the animal was. So you're not going to learn anything about its true biological structures and how that might impact, that it might carry a bacterium that's good for clearing up, some kind of psoriasis, or like we'll never have that type of information. Living species, absolutely, like, especially in the field of botany, like, mycotoxins. Mycotoxin, no, what the hell's a plant toxin? Crap.
I call them plant toxins.
So these plant toxins can do all kinds of fascinating things. And same with, there's a lot of research being done on frogs. Like a lot of the frogs that I work with, Stanford University gets frogs all the time because they're doing all these research studies on different elements of their biology and how it, if we can find useful things in it. Although I think the last bunch they got was about a color study. They're doing a study on colors. I don't know.
Well, so this frogs?
Yeah, so this is my third weird job. We've only covered.
I was just gonna say you got a frog thing, man.
Yeah, so my former partner in the fossil thing, brought me into his world, and 20 years ago, he was essentially the first gringo to go down to Peru and navigate. He has a Peruvian business partner named Manuel, and the two of them, did something amazing. They essentially, there's all these frogs that are in Canada now because of Mark and Manuel and the work they did in Peru. And they essentially navigated the bureaucracy and figured out how to get CITES permits and how to, they've described new species of frogs and stuff like that. And so when I met Mark about 5 or 6 years ago, we met through fossils. And I remember messaging him one time, and he wrote back and he said something to the effect of, "Hey man, my internet signal is spotty right now. I'm in the Amazon right now. So I'll get back to you when I get back to the hotel," kind of thing. It's like, what the fuck are you doing in the Amazon? He's like, "Oh well, it's it's not a big deal, but this is what I do." It's like, what? Like you sell dart frogs all over the world, and so he's probably.
Wow.
He's probably the single biggest exporter of frogs, at least for, in his heyday, probably in the world, he was exporting more frogs than anyone on Earth. He's got one named after him. Like it's
really.
So I came in and I got to see the operation when it was kind of winding down. At one point he had 700 breeding groups, 2 massive barns full of animals. And
all frogs.
All frogs, yeah. Frogs, toads, tree frogs, all kinds of stuff. And essentially he was winding down, and then he was going to get out of it, and I kind of said to him, well, I feel like I'm missing out on an opportunity here. And it was kind of like a light went off in his head. He's like, "Do you want to do this?" I was like, "Yeah." So we kind of, now since then things have changed a little bit in the balance of our dynamics, and I don't want to get into any of that, but I am involved in a certain way. I work with the eggs and tadpoles. That's my department. So I collect eggs, hatch them out, I raise the tadpoles, and I take the young froglets and put them into the grow-up bins, and then he takes it from there. But we do the expos in Toronto, export all over the world.
And where do you get them?
So they're all captive bred. So we breed everything ourselves, but they're all he got them from all over the place. Like
I see. Okay.
So there's frogs from Colombia. There was some stuff even as far as Madagascar, but the bulk of it, really what he was known for was the Peruvian species. So he went to Peru and, got property down there. Basically, I can't remember how many times he's been down there, but he'd go down for 5-6 months at a time. He speaks fluent Spanish. He's, he did all the work down there to get these animals here into the pet trade. Yeah.
Andrew's sister, was it Peru?
Yeah.
She was down there studying psychedelics. Ayahuasca.
I heard that on the other. Yeah, so ayahuasca. So,
but she did a frog thing with whatever, some kind of slime that goes on the back of the frog, and they put it on a wound. They burn your skin, and they put it on the burn.
Yeah,
and it fucks you up.
Yeah.
Yeah. It'll So our frogs are a little boring, only because a captive bred frog is totally harmless. You could eat them like popcorn if you wanted to, if you were some kind of sick
weird
person.
Frog eating person.
Yes.
Because they're not generating the poisons because of they're not out there.
So it's called sequestering. So a sequestered toxin. So they actually get their toxins from the environment. So they eat these little ants and beetles and things naturally. Frogs are totally the non-fussy eaters. They're like, if it fits in my face, I am eating that shit. If they were the size of us, the human race would be probably, well, there wouldn't be 8 billion of us anyway.
So the toxicity of the animal comes from eating something else?
Yes. Yep. Sequestered toxin. Yep. And some of these toxins, again, this is where the nature shows do us a bit of disservice with the dramatization, but there's a frog we work with called Philobates terribilis. Which
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, it's it's the most toxic frog. It's like, don't even look at it. Oh, it's coming right for us. No, although they are very enthusiastic eaters, and that would be if that frog was the size of a car, like that's the one I would avoid all the time. They are very enthusiastic. Yeah, they'll like when they're getting fed, they like jump straight into the air so yes, so a lot of these other poison dart frogs, and by and large, most of them are imitated. They're imitating a color pattern that predators perceive as. Again, this comes into the risk benefit of evolution. Creating toxins is very expensive for an organism, right? So it's why, like a lot of venomous snakes, they often dry bite because it costs them a lot of resources to create these toxins, right? And so with frogs, it's very much the same. A lot of them are imitating other species. There's literally a whole, species of they're called imitators, and they imitate more poisonous frogs. But essentially, with the terribilis species, you've got a frog that you could technically wipe down and get the toxin onto it. Let's say a dart, let's say a poison arrow, like the poison arrow frog. And then there's other kinds that the natives would roast them until the milky, the toxins would come out, and they would coat the dart that way too, right? So only toxic when eaten to a predator. But you have to take. So I'm quoting Mark here, just in case some biologists are like, you are absolutely wrong. What he says about the terribilis in the wild. He's like, you could pick one up. Your hand might go numb. Just make sure you don't have any cuts on your hand, because it's a tetrodotoxin. It's incredibly effective on the human nervous system. But,
have you ever done that? You ever picked one?
No.
Okay.
No,
I'm not going to pick one up.
No. They're they're a Colombian species. So I've been to Peru. I have not been to Colombia yet.
Okay.
But and I've got to see a lot. A lot of the frogs that I work with every day. I've got to go down and see them in the wild, in the cloud forest, and in Tarapoto, and it's kind of cool.
That is cool. Side thing. I once worked with a frog wrangler.
Cool. On a set?
In a commercial.
Nice.
It was actually kind of funny. I think she's an animal wrangler, but it was really funny. We were doing a Subaru spot, and there's, I guess, maybe a moment in the commercial where I don't even know if I'm allowed to say any of this. I'm sure I can, but just a little dirt road kind of thing, and we're all out there looking at the location and doing some prep work, and the director says, "Okay, so right here we would have the frog," and he asks the lady, "Well, so what do you need to do?" And she says, "Well, I'll just probably find a frog, and then I'll put it. Where do you want it? Well, maybe right here. Yeah, I'll probably just put it there." It was so funny. Like, she was so like, there's not much to this.
Yeah,
it was hilarious.
The frog's going to do what it's going to do, too. Especially a wild frog. It's like, I was trying to shoot the album cover for the last Factory City album, and there's a song on it called King of Frogs. So I really wanted to have this graphic of this. I bought this really realistic human skull, and I wanted to have the frog sitting on it. And I'm lying in the mud with the camera. We're doing the shoot, and we could not get a frog to cooperate. I should have gotten her number. It's like, well, what do you need? What are you gonna do? I guess I'm gonna find a frog. I'm gonna put it there.
Put it right there.
Awesome. That'd be great, because I've been trying that all day. We had to settle on a toad, so we've actually got a toad on the front cover of the record, and because the toads are great. Toads are so charismatic. It just sat there, but the frog was like, in between frames, you would see like, the skull, and you got the background, and there would just be a blur in these 2 feet in the upper right corner or whatever.
Hilarious, man.
frog wrangler. Imagine
it's so silly.
So
it's funny as hell.
I've done some frog wrangling, helping Mark out on some photo shoots. So like another friend of mine, a wildlife photographer, he basically does these workshops, and so there's a frog workshop, and so his photography company sort of partnered up with Understory Enterprises, which is Mark's company, and his name is Andrew McLaughlin, fantastic photographer, a photographer. I don't know why I said that weird. Sorry, Andrew.
That's all right.
And so he would bring in 8 to 10 people, and we would set up little sort of diorama sort of backgrounds. Often nothing to do with frogs in the natural environment. It'd be like a flower in a vase. And you've got this poison dart frog on a flower from Singapore. It's like, well, whatever.
Just because it looks pretty.
It's the visual, right?
Yeah.
It's like, nature's amazing as it is, but like, it's just like, what? It just looks good. Put a sunflower.
I know.
North American sunflower and a South American frog. And so we would wrangle frogs. And the photographers always want the frogs to do something ridiculous. Like, can we get the frog hanging by one toe and put its arm out this way? It's like,
oh my God,
it's a frog. It has its own ideas.
Can it give us a thumbs up?
Yeah.
Can you get it to look at the frame?
No, seriously, and I know, I'm sure lots of people have things to say about photographers, but it's funny what you want. It's like, it's a frog. I could talk to it all day long, and it's still just going to do what it's going to do.
Okay, so we work in film, but and everyone knows that it's not real. You can go to a Marvel movie; it's not real.
Does everyone know it's not real?
Well, no. I'm with you. Yeah, often or not, I look at my buddy watching a movie, very questioning what. But then then there's reality TV. They call it reality TV, but I've been behind the scenes of some things like that as well, and it just isn't.
It's fully scripted, yeah.
It's fully, all this stuff is fully scripted, and it's unbelievable. So what about a National Geographic documentary?
Oh, that's such a good question.
Yeah, you got Dave. You were imitating David Attenborough earlier.
Yes, I was. I love Sir David is my. If there's one human being on Earth I could meet, it would be Sir David.
Okay.
And he did a great spot on trilobites too, by the way. And he is a voice for because all these sites all over the world are getting locked down by governments. They're like, even in Morocco, they're like, no more digging, no more fossil collecting.
But if David comes to the door,
David has said, he's like, you're cutting off the foot to spite the leg. You're removing an opportunity to be interested. To be interested in something. There's a reason why nostalgia sells. If you love something when you're a kid, it's probably going to be a passion for you when you're older. And you're not letting these kids have any access to this stuff, so you are killing earth sciences by doing this shit. But so to the point that you made, so again, my former partner Mark, it's weird to say that. Anyway, we're still buddies. He
talked about this drama for the last hour.
Drama. He's worked with the BBC extensively.
Okay.
So he's gone, and I've heard all the stories about it, and you get all these really stuffy English photographers down, and they sit in a closet for like hours, and they're constantly trying to get the right shot, and we're waiting for the frog to do this, and it's all staged. It's all staged.
Yeah.
Which is fun because they're what they're doing is they're emulating the natural behaviors, so they're really not far off the mark. But essentially, you're waiting for a male frog to start calling. Only the males call. Generally, Generally, only the males.
How does it sound?
Let's see. Does
it sound like a seagull?
No. So there's frogs that croak. No, it's basic bitch frogs that croak, and then a lot of them have trills, like things like that.
Okay.
And, there's the Trilobites terribilis. I call it like a gibbering call. It's kind of like a monkey's call.
Show us that one.
I'm good at mimicry, but only in the moment. So I believe I have a sound recording of it. Let me see if I can pull it up here.
Really?
Yeah.
You have a. What is it?
I should have a.
What?
I can't even say the word. The whole music's good though.
This is all really incredibly fascinating stuff, man.
No, it's not that. Let's see. See, this is all mixed in with song ideas and stuff.
It's all good. I think that the audience can look up their own darn sounds.
Yeah. You know what? Just look up any frog, and chances are the first hit is going to be that frog with the word call next to it. But the calls are varied. So, there's all kinds of different calls, and there's territorial calls and different length of sequences. Like there's Pamilio, it's kind of like almost like a quacking sound. Again, it's weird. I can do it because I can call to them and they'll start singing and stuff.
Really?
And you know what song they actually love? There's that one Led Zeppelin song with the whistle in it. I feel bad. I can't remember the name of the song, but every time that whistle goes off, every imitator frog in the building is going off.
Really?
It's like they rock out to Led Zeppelin. My frogs are cool.
That's
man.
Cool.
Yeah, they're cool frogs.
So, but are there documentaries ruining this stuff at all?
Only the ones that are over the top. So, it's sort of a troubling trend in amphibian, really in wildlife biology, is that every biologist now wants to have a TV show. So they end up being these over-the-top personalities, and they're trying to get noticed and get attention. It's not like it was where, your biologist is the guy who's working in a stuffy room and working by himself or with him and his field assistants. Now it's like there's very much a cast of desire for fame, especially in subsequent generations as things change too. We all live online, we all live publicly. We're all trying to get attention in some way and validation for our work. So you tend to see these over-the-top naturalists and biologists that essentially are trying to get their own show or whatever.
Sure.
So I think those types of shows, like the Attenborough stuff, the BBC stuff, is at an incredibly high level of quality.
Big budget.
I've watched all of it. Yeah, massive, multi-million, and they'll take 4 years to do a show.
Yeah.
But what they're producing is really high-end stuff, and they're capturing stuff that, it happens on Earth, like they're capturing real events. But, you got the zany guy doing like a kid's show going into the Peruvian rainforest, like, oh, you can't touch this frog. It's, this frog can kill 10 people.
That reminds me of
are you going to hand it an AR-15 and give it an American passport? Like, what do you?
Oh, sure. Bring guns into it.
That's right. Y'all are gun people.
Yeah.
That's all right. No, I've never been a gun guy, but ballistics technology is really interesting. It's like
yeah, you don't
cool.
find it under the earth, but
that's right. Yeah,
it's neat.
Yeah.
No, that's cool, man.
Trilobites.
Yeah. So was that what got you into frogs? Was your buddy?
I've always been into frogs.
Okay.
Always. Yeah. Ever since I was a kid, it was like, man, I broke my toe one time trying to get into a sewer grate because I was trying to rescue the little leopard frogs that were stuck in the bottom of the sewer grate.
Well, you did mention about rescuing the frog that your next door neighbor was trying to attack with a golf club.
Yeah.
So that's interesting that you did that, and then you became a man, and
right. Yeah.
Another guy's doing frog things, and it just kind of wow. That's
and it's one thing that I've had some friends point out is that the last I have one of my bands called Factory City, and we've done a couple albums, and I wrote this song called "The King of Frogs," and in 2015, and then 4 years later, 3 years later, I was working with frogs, and
So when you have your own frog show, is that going to be the song?
Well, I'm trying to work on my zany persona.
Yeah.
And I really got to nail, because again, facts don't matter anymore. It's just how zany you are and how many people in your cult of personality you can draw to you. And So I'm still working on
the
those
British
elements.
accent thing is working.
Yeah.
I love my early 90s David Attenborough, early 90s in terms of age, not David Attenborough in the 1990s, but I like that one. So yeah, I use that one wherever I can, especially narrating something absolutely ridiculous.
Well, give us an example.
Oh, geez. See, I have one of those, like, I was described as having a mercurial personality. So usually I have to, it'd be like a momentary thing, but I'll try and load something up. Yeah.
Not to worry. Just surprise us.
I've always wanted to do voice work. I know a couple of voiceover actors, but those guys they pull it out. It's like, like a guy like Harry Shearer is just like, for me, it's like, oh man, I got to think about it, and you've already lost, right? You've already lost the plot.
Gig, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yes.
I'm almost sorry I brought it up. So do you do dinosaurs? Anything like that?
No. So as a buddy of mine once said, he's like, he says, every dinosaur guy I know working in commercial dinosaur sales has served time in a federal penitentiary.
No way.
Good reason not to do it then.
Yeah, I mean, the most famous story is Pete Larson out of his company's called the Black Hills Institute, and the Tyrannosaurus skeleton, Sue. Do you know this story?
Yeah, Sue's in Chicago, right?
Yeah. So
I saw her skull,
and he served jail time for that, and it's the whole story is absolutely insane. I don't want to get into it because again, there's a lot of sides to it, and there's a lot of opinion, and it comes into a lot of other elements of I believe was found on indigenous land, but I think there was permission. But then once the thing was found, the permissions changed and lawyers got involved. And I'm sure a lot of lawyers got rich off that whole deal.
I think that's fascinating that you get permission to do something, you find it, and then the permissions change because they're kind of jealous you found it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it still ends up in a museum and is still the same guy who dug it up. He gets no leeway.
These are multi-million-dollar things, right? And there was, he was on the news again recently because I think something to the effect of his brother, I don't know what happened, but his brother left the company and everything ended up in court, and they ended up having to sell one of their other famous dinosaurs to basically, because most of their assets were tied up in the fossils themselves, right? So they didn't have liquid assets to pay the guy out so he could take his part and go.
Right.
So they had to sell. I think what a lawyer did is that they gave Pete's brother the rights to sell Stan, and I don't know if you heard about that.
No.
But that they projected Stan would go for I think $7 or $8 million, and it ended up selling for something like $30 million.
Whoa!
And what is Stan?
Stan is I think the second most complete Tyrannosaur skeleton ever found.
Why are Tyrannosaurus so expensive as opposed to, let's say, the Brontoburger?
The Brontoburger. Well, so with a dinosaur, you're talking about a massive, massive, massive amount of work. So these things, when you see them articulated and mounted, they look like, it's like, cool, I can imagine that with skin. But when you find it, it doesn't look like that. Like there's compression, there's missing parts. You're talking about an animal that was decomposing. Like,
right.
There's parts missing, parts of, turned to dust and
similar
sand.
to.
Yeah.
Except that they're bigger.
It's on a scale, of an order of magnitude larger. And so people have to prepare this, and it's thousands and thousands of hours. Just in terms of articulating one of these things, I can't imagine what the cost would be. And it's not my field. I don't really know some of the ins and outs, but there's a lot of people involved to get one of those things articulated and mounted, and there's a lot of restoration that gets done too. So already you're dealing with hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions, to get this thing out of the ground, prepared, cleaned, mounted, scanned. And I know part of what the Black Hills Institute does is they do really comprehensive three-dimensional scans of these, and they sell the replica models to museums and researchers all over the world. They also sell the scans so people can research, this thing's been scanned inside and out. So there's a lot of, it's a very emotional thing for a lot of people because, people want the actual thing. The researchers want to work with the actual thing. But realistically, a full three-dimensional scan gives you details you can't even see on the real thing. So, we're talking about a lot of egos and emotions that's involved in dinosaur stuff. And every country in the world has pretty strong dinosaur protection laws as far as, Mongolia is a great example. So people were illegally getting dinosaurs out of Mongolia for decades. And the Mongolian government has been basically trying to track these things down. And the most famous case is the one that ended up in Nicolas Cage's collection. He had a dinosaur skull, which they came and
took it back. Yeah. And
oh wow!
I don't know if he got much shit for that, or
I see. So like a black market type thing.
Oh yeah. So there's a lot of that, and so it's kind of like a bit like trilobites, but taken to a full extreme because dinosaurs are fully in the public consciousness. That's something that even if you don't know nothing about nothing,
you know what a dinosaur is.
You know what a dinosaur is. Yeah.
You may not be able to say the name.
Yeah. Archaeopteryx. It's So there's a lot of federal laws attached to dinosaur stuff. So, and that's what my buddy said. He ended up leasing some land, I think in Montana, and I think he found one tooth, and then he's just like, I'm not doing this because it's too much money. You need to invest up front, and there's too many other avenues. So there was a famous case where there was a dueling set of dinosaurs, so predator prey together, like amazing, and someone had got basically the collector had gotten the rights from the landowner, and I believe it was termed the mineralogical rights or something like that. But when they found it, so now you're dealing with a multi-million-dollar find, like millions and millions of dollars. So the landowner actually took the collector to court. And this is a case where the good guys actually won. So the collector actually won because the mineralogical right, because it's mineralized bone, right? It's not bone anymore. You're essentially talking about rock on rock in the shape of the dinosaur skeleton or whatever. So they actually got to take that fine. They won in court. I think it went all the way to the Supreme Court. It's something nuts.
Okay,
or whatever the American version of that is.
Take me back. This guy finds a dinosaur under the ground, and he digs it out, cleans it off, shows it to you, and what he's showing you is not the bone?
Well, so all the biological components have been mineralized over time. Essentially, what happens is the biological components get replaced by components of the surrounding sediment. So, and that's literally mineralization, fossilization is the process of the replacement. So it's not bone. You're not going to crack it open. You might see structures that resemble bone marrow, but it's been replaced by the minerals of the surrounding sediment that the bone was encased in, which is literally fossilization. It's just like, it might have been, whatever the shell was comprised of. It's, if you were going to do an analysis on it, it probably wouldn't be much different from the surrounding rock because it's been replaced. Mineral replacement.
Oh.
Yeah. So there was another case there's a Swedish dinosaur guy, but he's a commercial paleontologist. And he leased some land, I can't remember where, but he ended up doing this big operation. He found, I think it was an Allosaurus that he found. And it was a big one. It's the most complete one ever. And there happened to be some government asshole flying in a plane. He was investigating something else. And from the plane, it was one of those small planes, he saw
a dig.
He saw the dig happening. So then he checks with the BLM, Bureau of Land Management, and they find out that he's 70 feet or 100 feet outside of the zone that he was licensed to find the. So he had invested massive amounts of money into this dig, and he's thinking, I just found the jackpot, the most complete Allosaurus ever. And they came and they find him and they took the find, and other researchers came and took it over, and it is ruthless. I wouldn't get involved with dinosaurs.
But it's like not like they found it.
It's so wrong.
No, but that's what the government does. It's like, it's why bureaucracies are the way they are. It's like they're so good at taking credit for other people's work. It's like, and they've got, it's the law, right? It's the law. It's immutable. You can't. So, it's just crazy. Like there's no, if they want something, like they're going to find a way to.
Was this fella aware he was 70 feet outside?
No, he wasn't. He actually didn't know.
Oh,
yeah.
man.
I mean, again, like who knows, mistake, right? But yeah, I mean, that's a pretty big screw up. And,
it almost feels like that's something that they should just leave then. Okay, then just leave it there because you legally shouldn't have found it, and we can't step in on it.
What are the odds though? Like, and if I found it, like, I mean, I gotta say, like, if I found a friggin' Allosaurus, it'd be like, well, that's the line, but oh my god, this is an Allosaurus. Come on, guys, like, come on, I can't leave this thing here.
Crazy.
And so this is the other element where governments and academics have it wrong. If you're not out there doing the work, please shut up, because these things, once they weather out, and weathering is essentially just the environmental process of nature is sandpaper, and the longer something is exposed, it gets destroyed. So, I always say, and I tell landowners and things too, like, I go in and I rescue these things because they are going to be destroyed by the natural elements. So like in England, the Jurassic Coast, you're only allowed to collect fossils that fall out of the cliff. Okay, that's fine. But there's still pushback on that. People want to ban that type of collection. It's like, if you don't go out there and collect these things, they get taken by the tide, they get pounded to dust, they get pounded to sand, and it's gone forever. How does that serve anyone? So what if I'm making a couple bucks off this? Like, why do you care? Like, it's either someone that wants to do the work, wants to go into the field, wants to put the time in, wants to learn their craft, wants to get good at it, and then the person that sits back and goes, I don't think you should have that. I don't think you should be allowed to do that. So it's kind of like, if I can't have it, no one can. That's sort of some of the attitude of the academics is just like, well, I'm not going to go out and do the field work because academics make terrible field workers. But, you know, or at least they do now.
Or they're lazy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, you know, it's perfect work for me because I'm unencumbered by all the scientific details as far as like, the size of the cephalic margin and how many lenses are in this eye. I don't care about that. Like, you know, I'm a visual person. I love the artistry of it. I love, you know, to get, you know, I've come into my own as a prep artist. It's something I spend a lot of time on. I work really hard on it to do the best I can. So for me, it's a marriage of art and history. And it's not so much about the science because there's nothing we can really learn from this that some more, you know, a researcher hasn't already gone down and you know, learned everything he can learn from that. What am I going to do? I'm going to save the thing, you know? I want to save it from, you know, and if somebody wants to buy one off me, what's the harm in that?
I don't get it. They're everywhere.
They literally are everywhere. We're walking on them. Like,
yeah, they're everywhere. So what's the point? Why would anyone ever just say, don't do this?
The same reason that that anybody says that anyone gets, you know, emotional or upset about anyone having anything. It's just there's just that element of ego and jealousy, and it's all these things, all these feelings that I don't think we really understand. And you know, like I know a couple other collectors, and honestly, I hate to say this, but the Canadian collectors in the trilobite field are among the most vitriolic. You know, they will. I don't know if you know, I'm going to tell this story. I'm going to leave the names out, but I've got a colleague and a guy I consider a friend he's a really nice guy, and he operates out of Quebec, and he does what I do. He does it, I would say, better than me because he loves all of it. He loves the science of it. He's right into it. He's a young guy, and he's good at it, and he's lucky, and he finds really cool stuff. He's found a bunch of new things. He did something a little dumb. He went over to the Burgess Shale in British Columbia, and the Burgess Shale is essentially the one thing in invertebrate paleontology you don't do. You don't even look at it, like, because the stuff is very valuable because it is illegal to collect. It's protected by federal law. Parks Canada's got that place locked down. The ROM has it locked down. And he went over and he went there and he took a few things. Well, he told a friend of his that he got a couple things, and his friend is a very, very jealous person and reported him to Parks Canada.
Oh, man.
So he had an undercover cop contact him to buy some stuff.
Oh, no.
He didn't realize it, and, you know, he shouldn't, there's a lot of, he shouldn't have done this, but I always refer back to this is nuts. There's a whole fucking mountain of these things. But it, you know, you can't, again, the law is immutable. You can't, there's no gray area with the law, right? So, he got nailed, and I think he got fined. It was tens of thousands of dollars, and he got, I think, house arrest for 5 or 6 months. From a fellow trilobite collector reported him
for taking a
jealousy.
trilobite rock.
For taking a trilobite rock. Most people don't know what they are. Parks Canada knows what they are. I mean, and up until that's the biggest fossil, you know, criminal case that's happened in our country in, I don't know, it's a couple decades. There was a guy.
I just find it all so silly.
Oh, it's crazy. So a guy, I remember reading years ago that a guy, I think it was still the Burgess Shale area, somewhere in BC. They were on a tour, so they tour around. They show you the stuff sitting on the cliff face. There's trilobites there. Don't touch them. Don't touch them. Don't take them. The rain and the snow and the weather crank them to dust, but don't take them. They're not for you. They're only for academics. They're the scientists.
How snobbish
Even though,
is that?
the hypocrisy is deafening. So I guess one of the guys on the tour, he took a little trilobite, and they searched you after. I guess they searched him, and they found he had it, and he got fined $4,000, and I couldn't believe it. So up until then, that was the
fuck?
Up until this one involving a friend of mine, you know, he that was the biggest case of.
So when they find a trilobite in your pocket, what do they do with it? Do they go put it back?
I think, yeah, they frisk you, they pull it out like, you son of a bitch, and they throw it down the mountainside, and then they book you. No, well, because what do they do? Well,
that's friggin' mind-blowing.
Honestly, you know, and again, like, this is not the hill that I want to die on, but we have there's so many of these things. Like, there's a whole mountain range of them, and you know, this Burgess shale fauna, we have a pretty comprehensive, and they're finding new stuff all the time. But there's certain species that, and I've heard stories from other researchers that have worked on those projects, on those digs, and I definitely will not name them just in case someone in the ROM hierarchy hears this and I'm blacklisted more than I already am from the ROM. There's trilobite species, like, we've already got 1,000 of these in the basement. They throw it down the hill, down the slope, but no one else is allowed to have it. And the thing is, these things are so valuable. Not only is it potentially an income stream for Parks Canada, which, you know, you can always use money, but it's also, they've created the market on it by making them illegal, right? It's just kind of like, you know, legalize weed, no one cares anymore. Like, was it Portugal that legalized most drugs? Like,
yeah, like everything.
You know, it's just like, as soon as you create an opportunity for black market. And I went down to Tucson. It's the biggest gem and mineral show in the year, in the world. Sorry, a couple of years back, we were showing our stuff down there, and you know, I went to a bunch of rooms, and they're selling Burgess shale stuff, and there's stories about RCMP guys going down to Tucson and recovering this material because it's illegal to have. But you know, who knows? There's so much. It's so charged.
I can only think of a few other things that would be more important that we should be, you know, using our police.
Oh my God.
So what blows my mind over my buddy getting nailed is this happened over COVID. We were in the middle of a global pandemic, allegedly. You know, depending, everyone's got their opinions on it.
It's another podcast.
We'll leave that alone. We'll leave that alone. But you know, and like good little boys and girls, you know, we all tucked in, and you know, most people that work for themselves, like, I had just started my own business. And I lost everything. I lost the touring. I lost all my income. I was doing house shows for free. I was doing live stream shows for free for you know, a year and a half. And
yeah, man.
And everyone's got their horror stories from that, right? We've all got the PTSD from that shit. And this is what our government was spending money on: a sting operation on rocks. Are you fucking kidding me? And I was kind of wondering about like are they going to have the nuts to put this guy's name in the paper? Because the feeling at that time was, fuck the government. This is insane. This is, you know, we were on like lockdown 6 or whatever.
It's my feeling right now.
So what they charged them, it probably doesn't cover a fraction of what we paid in tax money to have this operation, right? The sting operation to get this guy on rocks. Like, it's just, it honestly makes me sick. It makes me sick. And it's just, do we not have a better use for our time? And they're all proud of themselves. They're probably high-fiving. We got this guy. It's a rock.
Dudley Do-Right got his man.
And you're gonna put this thing in the ROM, and Joe Bob and Joe Bob Jr. are gonna come up and be like, look at that, son. It looks like a grease stain on a rock. And you can believe that in a fucking museum. Let's go look at the dinosaurs. Like, who gives a shit? Like, it's just, it's not. It's not
there's
in
70
the public
billion out
consciousness.
on the mountain range.
Yeah, there's tons of them, and you know, but these guys, they're so passionate about it, as far as that, you know, people like me, you know, we're the enemy. But you know, realistically and historically, the people that contribute most to the knowledge base are the dumbass diggers like me. We go out and we work our asses off. That
makes a lot of sense.
And I still, even feeling the way I feel and as biased as I am against that type of community and that type of, you know, the aggression they have for guys like me, I still want to work with them. I want to, because I want to contribute to the knowledge base. I want to, you know, like, I want to be a part of it. And so there's other projects we're trying to get off the ground, and you know, it's hard to find researchers that will work with a commercial paleontologist, for one, even though I'm like, I want to give you, this is new. It's new. You've never seen it before. I want to work with you. And if I got to sell stuff to justify the $30,000 in expedition fees that I had last year, then I got to sell stuff, right? Like like I said, I'm a victim of my own curiosity constantly. I'm just, my consciousness is just party to wherever my interests take me. And I watch the stuff happening, and sometimes I go like, what the hell am I doing? This is nuts. I do expensive things for not a lot of money, but I love it. But then when you come against that kind of, that opposition, you're just like, man, it's discouraging. And, it's, I'm willing to do the work.
Are they at all worried about what you might find?
Well, again, a lot of it's ego. So I will say, not to cast shade on the paper that was just published, but, one thing that was important to me is that Mark and I got credit for discovering the holotype. So a holotype is the type specimen of which the description is based off of. So that's like, that's your Sioux. That's your specimen that is representative of the species that's being described. So we found the holotype, and when you read this thing, like I couldn't be more removed from its discovery. Like it's, and me being me, and that's just how science is. Like it's dispassionate for anyone else that and there was a bit of a bunch of other guys jumped on the paper at the last minute, and apparently there's a lot of etiquette with, everyone's supposed to know that other people are jumping on the paper. I didn't know. There was a couple guys that jumped onto the paper. I didn't know about it, and that kind of stuff is frustrating because yes, it's an algae. Yes, 6 people are going to read this paper, but I was proud of it, and I was proud to work with.
And someone else is getting the credit.
Yeah. Credit is not given. There's no mention of our company and stuff like that. Like it's just it couldn't be more removed from us as a discovery, and that stuff makes you a little butt hurt, so to speak.
Yeah, fuck that. What the hell?
It bugs you a bit, and I just hope it's not indicative of what future collaborations will be like, and and I've donated stuff to the ROM too. Like the new exhibit, they did buy something from me. Something that I really didn't want to sell. So, I sold it to them because they really wanted it for their pyrite exhibit. And, but, and I felt bad about selling something to the ROM because, they work on a lot of donations but, they were doing the thing, and I was really proud of the find, and I thought that this was not a fossil that would be appreciated by the public consciousness. It's a little tiny thing. But it was really important to me, but they wanted it really bad. So I let them have it. But because of my residual guilt, I ended up donating 2 or 3 other really nice pieces. And I just wanted our company to get credit. I'm 99% sure that we didn't get any credit for those donations. And I guess, and there's supposed to be tax receipts and that kind of stuff. But, the new director is really, really not a fan of commercial paleontologists.
Now, is this director, are they incredibly removed from this line of work are they a director because of something else, marketing or something, you know what I mean?
Well, usually they've got their PhD, they've got experience in the field. And I know that this particular guy is involved with a lot of furthering the knowledge of the Burgess Shale material, and that it's a very important soft tissue site, and it really is scientifically important, but I don't believe it's important enough to spend, $50,000 or $60,000 of money to chase down a 23-year-old guy in Quebec for some rocks. That it's one of the, and again, I am shooting my mouth off a little bit, but
I like it.
Again, it's all. It all depends on what your ego, what your ambition, and for me, I just don't understand. I'm like, why can't we all get along? Come on, like we all want the same thing. But you get money from grants, and I get money from clients, and by limiting collectors' ability to pursue the thing they love and collect what they love, you're creating that market. You're creating the high price points of things, and as soon as you make something illegal, it's and we're going that way as a Quebec and Ontario. The only reason that I can sort of gray area still dig trilobites and prepare them and sell them is because we do so much aggregate business in those 2 provinces. We do massive amounts. So why can Lafarge smash up 10,000 of these things in a weekend, but I go in and I find one and I sell it to, let's say, a buyer in Japan, and, you know, I'm potentially on the hook for some kind of legal recourse because, so back in the 70s, there was a blanket law passed called the Heritage Act. And this is some bullshit. I think it was 1973 or something like that. But the Heritage Act stipulates that no artifact found in Canada can be of a value over 500 Canadian dollars can be sold outside the country without it going through institutions, without it being first offered for sale, which could be a year, 2-year process. Like, you know how slow things move in this country. And especially when you're dealing with, you know, institutions, like it's not in their best interest to expedite the process, right? So if you got a buyer, would you mind waiting 2 years just to make sure the Canadian museums don't want to buy this thing first? So really legally, I'm not allowed to sell anything outside of the country for more than $500. So the government has this thing where if you fall outside of the curve of working at Walmart or you know, operating a quarry, if you were in a niche business, and this definitely plays into the frog thing as well, like the shit that my buddy Mark has had to deal with over the years, it's unbelievable. Like it's almost like, are they trying to put us out of business? And we were audited last year, and the lady that was handling our case, she did not understand how our business operated, what it was. She didn't understand why most of our business was outside of Canada. Canadians are terrible at supporting Canadians. I don't know why that is. And you know, in music and everything I've done, I've seen that trend constantly repeat itself. And there's not very many trilobite collectors in Canada. It's mostly, my market is the rest of the world. The U.S. Is huge, and Asia is huge. Because there's a lot of really, really dedicated collectors all over the world. So they didn't understand that most of our business, most of our sales come from outside the country. So what she came after us for was, she's like, well, yeah, I see you've got these Canada Post, you know, shipping labels and stuff, but how do you prove that you didn't just print these off and you just sold it to somebody in Canada? Like, what the fuck? So they went after us for our... So yeah, she couldn't get us on what she wanted to get us for. So she's like, well, basically, you're shipping parcels out under this other company heading. This is fraud. Like, how is this fraud? Like, it's a small business solutions card. We ship 1,000 parcels a year, so we're going to use that card. But no, in the Canadian government, in the bureaucracy, and all its niche wisdom, that is considered fraud. So we had to completely change how we did business, and so like we're already paying crazy prices. Like it's a crazy time to own your own business, and we're getting stomped. Like it's and we fall outside the curve. They don't understand it, and they don't like it. And it's the same with the frogs. They don't understand it. They don't like it. So like Mark's business is held to the same standard as a massive greenhouse that exports, you know, millions of plants a year. He exports a few thousand or whatever. He's held to the same standard, has to pay the same CFIA regulation fees, has to have the same investigations done into his plants. It's insane. Like, it's just, there's no quarter given to a niche business that falls outside the curve in this country. I mean, like, it's not like please consider us trilobite sales. I know of 3 of us in Canada, you know, that do it, maybe 4. But, you know, it just it'd be frustrating because, like, you've already got enough against you doing weird shit. But, you know, it's like, yeah, you're punished for pursuing your passion.
I mean, most people I know, I don't think they would even give a shit. But then, but because of the system and the rules and things, they're told to give a shit. They're told that, you know, whether you give a shit personally or not, this is the rule. So whatever's happening, you gotta, you know, stand within that line. So you can argue all you want, but they have the rule book. They're just gonna go, well, but it says here.
Yeah, you fall between these, and these both don't look good for you. It's like, it's kind of like, you know, we don't need more laws. Like, it's optics. Like, it's kind of like the you know, when you're looking at something in a microscope, the more you zoom in, the more you see, right? 100%. And that's kind of what laws are happening. It's like we're zooming in, the optics are zooming in on businesses, and they're seeing things they don't like, and they're creating new regulations and laws for that. So I think I'll probably have to figure out something else in the future, because it's just a matter of time before all fossil collecting is illegal. And unfortunately, it's incidents like this Burgess Shale thing are that gives them ammunition to pressure the government for stricter regulations.
I don't understand.
And they want it in Ontario too. They want it in Ontario. They want it in Quebec. It's already in Nova Scotia. It's already in Newfoundland. It's already in BC, Alberta. Like, it's already everywhere. You can't Manitoba. If you find a trilobite in Manitoba, you cannot have that. That is not. That's the property of the Crown. It is not yours.
So if I buy land and I build a house, and while I'm building this house, I find, I don't know, whether it's a trilobite or it's a stegosaurus, what happens to me? Like, what do I do?
You be very, very quiet and build your house and live your life as a happy man. And for God's sake, don't find any human remains.
Dinosaur in the basement.
Really?
Oh,
well,
yeah. There was a case of a skull fragment being found on some lady's property, and oh my God, I don't know what ended up happening out of it, but she was on the hook for tens of thousands of dollars. It's a crazy world. When you fall outside the curve, you fall a long way because they can't regulate you, they can't control you in the way that they want to. So it's almost like it's an offense to them. And like the lady we talked to through, and luckily we passed the soft audit. We just got a scolding, but I'm watching you guys. One of those ones, like fucking hell. So it's crazy that you gotta really keep your hands clean in this business. And I mean, like, so there's
seems ironic
by limiting. Yeah, I know. Wonderful irony. Yeah. I don't care which cabal of I don't fall in with the the one throng or the other. I think an asshole is an asshole, and a politician is just about the lowest calling for any human being on earth, in my opinion. But because it's a desire for control, and it's a desire to say no. And I think you see a lot of academics kind of fall into that same trap. It's like, well,
that's the thing. When you become a politician, I mean, you think to yourself, I would imagine that when you start as a politician, you're kind of going, well, I want to change the game. I want it for the better or whatever. But for who?
Yeah.
That's your basis, your opinion.
Things change.
Based on your people or
it's
whatever.
It's like that episode of The Simpsons where Marge becomes mayor and she's like, I'm going to clean up this city. And then somebody comes in, I got this fur coat from this, and you got this, and I go, we're just going to dump a little toxic waste over there. Oh, okay, that seems reasonable.
Yeah.
So it's just, I think, we're human, we're corruptible, we're so easily fallible. Like, it just, and it's like that in all things. Like, you can make a case for anything. You can be you can plant your flag in any hill, but I think, as humans, especially now more than ever, we gotta stop putting our sword in the ground and be like, no, this is the way.
Yeah,
and
that's the silliest shit.
But why? Like, stop being an idiot. Like, just live and let live, and just don't be an asshole.
But well, you know what it is that on that side of the coin, there's also a dumbass too. I mean, you're gonna say why can't I just do this? And the moment they go, well, you know what, it's pretty reasonable. I think you can. And then, 1,000 other guys are going to come along and go, well, then I can do this too, and whatever. Yeah. Which, I mean, again, who's to decide whether they can or can't? But, I mean, to me, it's the earth. It's the, we could all come across a fucking anything.
And that's a good point. So if tomorrow there was 10,000 more trilobite collectors in Ontario, man, every site you would hear the clap. You would hear the thunderclap in the sky. Every site would shut its doors, right? Like, nobody would let anyone on there because you'd let a couple guys on there, like 10 dedicated fossil collectors. They'll take down a cliff, like they will, and for the most part, there's a lot of natural erosion. So if you're digging in riverbanks and stuff, it's very little impact that nature wouldn't already have. And that's sort of my philosophy on how I do it. There's nothing that wouldn't happen anyway. It's, if anything, I'm going in, I'm finding the stuff before the rain does, and the freeze thaw cycle does, and I'm saving
totally
it, right? I'm rescuing the thing, and if I sell it to justify my time, but it's so taboo. I mean, like, it feels dangerous for me to talk about selling fossils because that is very much the atmosphere. That's the type of air that we breathe, and it's considered so taboo because the public thinks everything should be free. No idea how they get it. Like, no idea how it comes to them. But it should be free. Like, you shouldn't be doing that. Like, it's funny. The difference between collecting in Quebec and Ontario if you collect anywhere in Ontario that's in the sight line of any person that's walking around, you can set your watch 5 minutes. Someone's going to walk up, hands on hip. What are you doing here? What do you think you're doing? Are you allowed to be doing that? I can't tell you the number of times that's happened. You go to Quebec, nobody cares. It's just like even quarries. Like you go in, that's the one place in Canada you can still go into a huge quarry operation and be like, do you mind if we look around for some fossils? Yes, okay, yeah, just go ahead, just be careful. Like, are you kidding me, man? Like as long as we stop, I'm like, really? Like, yeah,
really?
Go ahead.
Now, does that mean that now has Quebec been all dug up now because of this?
No, actually, it's weird. There's so many more collectors in Ontario than there are in Quebec. And Quebec has, just like the GTA is, Quebec City and even Montreal area, like amazing deposits of Ordovician rock, and and then they'll let you in, and you just ask nicely. And
wow.
Whereas in Ontario, you better come in with an offer for a $10,000 lease and a pretty hot contract to get in anywhere. Like, there's obviously there's exceptions to everything, but
sure,
because it all everything's about relationships too, and what the public and what the landowner's perception of fossils is. So, like we work with a guy up north, and we called him cold call. And we're like, hey, do you think we could look in your quarry for fossils? She's like, oh, I don't know. Let me think about that, and I'll call you back. So I guess he thinks about it, and he talks about it with his wife, and we get a text. Yeah, no problem, boys. Yeah. And then he came down to meet us, and you kind of see the wheels spin, and it's like, well, if you guys find anything that's worth $1 million, I want a cut of it. And it's like $1 million. Well, there's no trilobite on Earth worth $1 million, but so people don't really have they don't have anything to measure it against. Like the value of a fossil is so subjective because no two are alike, and it's based on a whole bunch of complex factors. But so since this quarry owner has become a really, really, really good personal friend, both to Mark and I, and a great family, great people. Like we actually go hang out with them. They're actually in Peru with Mark right now, and the quarry up north, like that's locked down. So that's through a personal relationship. But most of the time, it's just no. If you get hurt,
wow,
yeah, some lawyer's going to take me apart. And yeah, it almost seems like there isn't a lot of personal culpability anymore too. It's like I'm willing, if I go into a big quarry, like I'll sign any waiver you want. Like I'm a responsible collector. I don't hang off cliffs. But it's not good enough anymore. It's a lawyer's world. They're the only ones getting rich.
Jesus, man. Well, we're slowly going to tie this up, but while you're thinking about what you're going to write on the table, what's next? Where do you dream of going, and what do you want to find?
Also, while you're doing that, if anyone wanted to get a hold of one of your trilobites, and or what, how would they do that? Do you have a website that?
So I mean, over the years we've tried to figure out, like, websites cost money, and the thing is, everybody wants to see every single thing you have,
right?
And then say no to it. So I find it personally better to deal with people one-on-one. So I would reach out either through our Facebook page or our Instagram page, which we've got over 17,000 followers all over the world. Actually, on the rock and roll thing, one of the coolest things that ever happened, I've been playing music professionally since I was 16 years old. And I've never really had any with Canadian rock royalty, sure, but never anyone on a global scale. But Slash liked some of our first posts.
Wow.
So that was cool to see. It's like,
the best.
Fucking hell, like there's Slash. And I looked at it, and it is him. It's actually him. So I guess he's interested in anything weird he's interested in. But you can find us on our Instagram.
Well, we're going to tag him on this one.
Yeah.
So what is your Facebook and Insta?
So it's just at Stormbed_Paleontological.
Okay,
but
I'll put it up on the screen.
If you look up at Stormbed, you'll find us. There's no one else called Stormbed. Yeah. So a Stormbed is a Stormbed is essentially like a high energy deposit that shows, like, there was a violent storm here. So that's where the name comes from. So it's called Stormbed,
cool.
Yeah. So a very active fossil deposit. Yeah.
Cool.
So as far as what's next, I probably shouldn't say anything about where I'm going because who knows what's going to be illegal in the future. Like one of the best fossil sites on Earth is a place called Anacostia Island in the Gulf of the St. Lawrence, technically Quebec. And some of the best fossils on Earth. These things weather out of the cliff, fall into the ocean, gone forever. They just extended, I think, 2 kilometers of the coastline and then everything inland protected under Quebec law. So it's totally illegal. And a bunch of academics were involved with pressuring that decision. And so now it is illegal to collect anything from there. And otherwise, I'd say there.
Now, again, are they just afraid of what you're going to
Yeah, I don't
find?
understand their end result.
It's, if I can't have it, no one can. And so, I mean, certain...
It's worth a lot of money and...
Yeah, and I mean, they don't want it on the market. They don't want, they want to control all of it, which...
They want it on
think
their market.
It's their business. They think they're it's all for them. And I mean, there's certain institutions like the AMNH is doing amazing stuff. The American Museum of Natural History, and they actually do proper expeditions out to Anacostia. I think they do 1 or 2 a year, and the bunch of researchers go out there and they do the work. And there's a whole bunch of new species that are actually being found all the time there. And that's all well and good, but you're talking about kilometers and kilometers of this rock that is constantly eroding with the tide. In and out, things fall off the cliff into the ocean, gone forever. Yeah,
What a shame.
it's sad and it's self-defeating in my opinion, because when you find people that do want to work with academic researchers like myself and Mark, again, you're cutting off the foot to spite the leg, or cutting off your nose to spite your face, I think is the actual saying. I like to mix metaphors and sayings. And
it's good though.
yeah.
Cool.
So pick a spot.
All right.
Yeah,
well,
and again, it doesn't have to be right there. It can be.
this should be
doesn't have to.
It should be easy to figure out. There's my model.
Right on. We get our own trilobite.
For those listening, Mike is drawing a trilobite with great detail.
There needs to be a cartoon, trilobite cartoon.
So I need to know whether the trilobite that Mike's drawing, is this the one with the spines?
Yeah.
For the jawed fish?
Yeah, which of the 21,000?
Would you like them in alphabetical order?
Please.
Hey, it starts with the type of trilobite that begins with an A.
David.
That's great. This was fascinating.
It's incredibly fascinating. This is one of those things where as soon as we stop recording, we're going to go, fuck, I should have asked this.
Totally.
That. I wish I knew more about that.
What's interesting, though, is trilobites, despite the fact there's 21,000 plus, that's just one tiny, tiny piece of this whole huge puzzle.
Yeah.
Of paleontology.
Yeah.
It's mind-blowing. Huh. Interesting.
So the trilobite with a bit of an afro or something.
Yeah.
It's good that we gave him 10 minutes.
Sorry, guys.
It actually looks really good, man. It's cool. One of these days we're going to show this.
Yeah, we're going to have to
on
put some pictures of the table.
Yeah.
That's great.
Oh, and I just want to note that you met one of our former guests on the podcast, Claire Tricky, one day. I know we talked about this before the podcast, but
that's great.
But
thanks, Mike.
Mike, your wife's name is Claire.
Yeah.
And you met Claire Tricky, and she was with a mic, which was kind of funny.
Yeah, at the London Gem and Mineral Show, she came in. She picked out a megalodon tooth and a whale vertebra. And normally I wouldn't remember that, but it was such a memorable conversation. So my wife is very friendly. You went to high school with her.
Yeah. She's awesome.
And it was the only time she's ever worked with me on an expo, and we were showing the trilobite stuff, and she's like, "Oh, what do you do?" She's like, "Well, I'm a hunter and I'm a taxidermist." And Claire's like, "Oh, that's interesting. Where do you do that?" And she's like, "Well, it's a small town you probably never heard of it called Rodney." And my wife and I both look at each other. It's like, we just moved to Rodney. Like, what are the fucking odds? and then Claire Tricky she's like, Mike, come over here. You won't believe this. These guys just moved to Rodney. I'm like, his name's Mike? Mike and Claire, and it's Rodney, population 560 people. It was such a bizarre, memorable thing. So Claire and I were driving to London a couple of days ago, and we were listening to that episode. And great episode, really interesting. Because
it was awesome. Like she was amazing.
Yeah, and like her, I was vegetarian for 15 years, and so was Claire. 2008 to I guess last year, and
wow.
We were very, very sort of. I'm not a big type A guy. I'm not big on hunters and stuff, and the swinging dick thing. But
sure.
like, Jesus, four-wheeling. But we moved out in the country, and over time, like it's eroded some of our most deeply held convictions about things, and I feel like the world could use a dose of that. It's just like, see, it doesn't affect me. It doesn't. If you do something, it takes nothing from me. So again, like I don't like putting my sword in a hill and standing my ground anymore. Unless my life's on the line or my livelihood's on the line. So when it comes to laws and stuff, yes, but. For hunting and stuff, no, it's cool as shit. And that was a great interview.
Yeah, I mean, we were kind of like that too. We didn't grow up. I didn't grow up a hunter. Randy wasn't a hunter.
No, I'm a gun enthusiast, but I was never a hunter.
Yeah, and I mean, I didn't desire killing a living thing at all.
Yeah.
But especially after someone like Claire, you really. I mean,
but
you
it was an education
insight as to why anyone does what they do, and
and she's a really good example of an ethical hunter because I noticed that some of the things she says, she's not like. Again, she's not into the swinging dickness of it. I mean, for obvious reasons, for one, but for the other, she's not.
Of course.
She's not like. She's like, well, why would you do that? I don't take a shot if it's over 30 yards. Why would you put something through that? Like, I want to fill my freezer. I'm looking for food. I'm not.
Yeah, I love that.
But when a bunch of guys get together, like, I have a lot more exposition on hunting now because I know a lot of moose hunters and guys that they live for it. It's everything. It's a culture.
Yes.
And that part of it, I'll never be part of that world. But it takes nothing from me. I got no issue. If fulfillment in life is hard to come by, and if it does that for you, fucking go for it.
It just goes back to the old mind your own business deal.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mind your business.
And mostly because you won't understand it if you try.
No. If you're not part of that world, then it's like this too. It's like everyone's got an opinion about everything now, but you don't need to. You can just. Live your life. Yeah. It's great. It's so freeing.
But no one's opinion is positive anymore.
No.
Why,
Well, even selling frogs, like, you get the odd person. It's like, are you allowed to have these? Like, do you think I'd be selling these at a reptile expo seen by 10,000 people if I wasn't allowed to have them? Like, come on. Like, there's everything is so heavily regulated.
Yeah, just why do people need to? Yeah,
it comes to that Karen thing. It's like, what are you doing here? What are you doing with that shovel? One time, my buddy got, some lady got in his face. What are you doing here? And he's like, oh, I'm burying somebody. And she went away. It's like, it's perfect.
Well, she didn't want to take that risk.
Yeah, none of your fucking business. It might be you if we continue this conversation. So, yeah,
that's hilarious.
Yeah.
Well, Mike.
Awesome.
I guess we'll tie it up there.
Hey.
That was fun, guys.
Thanks for my mug.
Oh, yes, thank you.
It's my pleasure, guys.
Thank you for all the gifts.
Awesome.
the other snacks in there.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Stormbed. Look them up. Everybody. Stormbed. That's awesome.
All right. Yep. Yeah, Stormbed Paleontological.
Paleontological. And if anyone's got any questions about the ins and outs, just feel free to message me. I try to get back to everybody. And
they can message me too, because I know everything now.
Yes. You've got the full, even with all the tangents that I've gone on today. And the one thing we didn't really touch on was the prep work. But, I get a lot of people asking about prep work and stuff. Everything's done under a microscope in a lab. And so
cool, man.
Anyone's got questions, reach out to me. I'm not the enemy, guys. If you have PhD in your name, I'm not the enemy. I'm just a dumb guy who's good at digging.
Man, awesome. It's so cool. Yeah, dude, thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me. It's an honor.
Dude, it was a pleasure
to be here. Yeah,
it was great.
Thanks, Mike.
My pleasure.
Okay.
All right.
Cut it, D.